But Bjergsen, man, I never want to watch this guy play Sylas again. Like, you have to go in there and you really have to be aggressive. But it's also, I can't believe his build, man. Rod of Ages into Banshee's Veil Zonias. This is the biggest coward build I have
stuff
all time on Sylas.
Right. This is going to be another classic episode of Summoning Insight. Don't really know if it's classic yet, but nowadays everyone writes their own reviews, don't they? I see teams just going, we have one of the best players. Well, that's grand of you to say yourself, but okay. So obviously on Summoning Insight, we have changed things since the old days, guys. This isn't 2014. We're Last Free Nation is the brand now. And if you want to keep watching the show, look, clicking on the show and watching it is great. It's a mutual exchange. You get a show, we get a click. The thing is, if you want to support the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a review on Spotify, add it on other platforms. Obviously, we'll talk about this at the end. We've changed the whole GrogCoin question thing, so that's going to change. We're still in the process of figuring out what the new thing is, so don't worry, news coming on that. And just as a quick update, in case anyone didn't, if for some reason you managed to miss the emails, miss all the things, and you still didn't do it, just go to the Discord, the Last Free Nation Discord, go to the GrogCoin Lounge. Monty's left a message there, and we can just take care of the last few people. Because the key thing about how we're doing this is, by the way, guys, we are literally giving money back essentially here. We just want to make sure all the GrogCoin holders were taken care of. Because even though, like, look, it didn't end up being something enormous, it was something that was sort of like gave us a level of stability for the years when we were transitioning to making this company. So we appreciate everyone who did it. And yeah, now we can start the show, obviously. So one thing I will say at the beginning of the show, Monty, is I'm in like a slight bad mood. I'm not in that bad a mood because I was telling you before, I did see some of those like Froskurinn interview clips, and it, once I set it from tragedy to comedy, I sort of brought me out my funk, you know.
Explain to people, because I hadn't seen this until you told me like right now. So explain to the fans who may not have.
Yes.
Who may not
Here's
know
the thing, because I'm a content creator myself, I won't just because I don't think it's legit like deny this guy. There's a guy on Twitter. I'll quickly find his name. I'll double check what it was. It just did like an interview. I think it comes out tonight, like the full thing, but he's put like on Twitter a couple of the like semi-spicy clips where he's done like a tell-all interview with Froskurinn, where I believe in one of the clips she even says that, you know, ask me all the hard questions or whatever. Spoiler, this guy seems like he's totally on her side and agrees entirely with her. So he's not really asking the hardest ones, but essentially, if you know Froskurinn, like she's one of those people, you let her talk long enough, she'll tell on herself, mate. So it does look like if you want some comedy, there's going to be some comedy there. And there will be some explanation, it seems, of what went on at G4 and stuff like that. I'll just say this though, like it does look very much within the vein of like, it is just her POV. So I just saw some of the clips. I'll see if I can find the name of the guy quickly, just so I can tell you. Oh, what was his name? Let's just see. Oh, this is it. His name is Happy Warrior P on Twitter, and his show's called Culturescape, and he's called Peter Pisk or something like that. And it'll be on his YouTube, basically. If you go to that Twitter, you'll see all the clips and all the rest of it. And he's done like this tell-all interview. I will say, Monty, this is another one of those ones where it's like, goodbye, y'all, and fuck y'all. I'm leaving. And then like a week later, like, so anyway, there's why. Where? I thought you left.
Last
you know, they never leave, do they, at all? They never leave, Monty. What is that?
You always get drawn back in by the siren song.
Yes.
As you were saying before we got on the show, like it is hard to leave, you know, really and just fade into obscurity, right? Do something in the background, change your career after you've been in front of stadiums full of people. It's tough. I get it. But the drive to come back will always be there, which is why it's not over, obviously.
Yes. And I'll even say this, by the way. I even think, just as a random aside, we're just doing a little bit of, this is almost like a petty grievances segment from Revenge by the Numbers, but we'll get into the rest of the LCS and LCK.
Look, man,
and LEC.
I'm just hoping that we get from that interview the names of the people who are bigots at Riot. That would be great. I hope that happens. Because obviously, if there are, as we said in the last episode, if there are people who have done these things, it would be nice to know who they are, especially from somebody who has allegedly nothing to do with the industry anymore and can effectively burn those bridges. So I hope that happens.
And I will say, because I can speak from personal experience on this regard, I even understand and on some degree actually feel pity for Froskurinn, because I can tell you, as someone who's been in the center of the storm myself a million times, trended on Twitter where you're just the bad guy and everyone's essentially, it's like the fucking 2 minutes of hate or whatever, they're just giving you hate for people you don't even know and aren't even involved in the convo. I can tell you the problem with that scenario is this: when you're someone who's putting all your work out on the internet to be judged, to be like essentially to get attention. It's one component of what you're doing. No matter how legit you are, you want people to read your work and to see your work and interact with your work and think about it and talk about your work. So the problem is this: when you initially start, you never get all that abuse. Like even people who don't like you, they just ignore you, don't they? Like whatever, I don't give a fuck. So they don't watch the episode. The problem becomes when you hit the like supernova level, like she has or some of us has as profiles in esports, is that I'm sorry, if you get that like there's almost an addiction to attention. And unfortunately, I will always say this is the downside that a fan will never understand. This is why it's an addiction, because it becomes negative. The best thing, aside from positive interaction, is negative interaction. Because what's the other option? Nothing. It's like the old Oscar Wilde quote. It really is, though. Yep. And so I have to say, it's only once I've fully extracted myself from that. And I've seen people like Richard take them like a few steps back. And you notice even he's like a lot more sort of careful when he replies to someone, who he replies to. He doesn't jump into a lot of the big things. It's because eventually you realize you actually have to disengage from some of that stuff. Like it just becomes like a feedback cycle. And even when it's positive, mate, usually in the drama ones, it's positive for you and then it's negative for the bad. You know, it's like no one really wins. Like that stuff is just trash. Like I'm glad I've sort of pulled back from that a bit.
The Oscar Wilde quote for you guys is the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about, which
I think in light of what we just said, that feels like the theme of why she's doing this interview, why she'll but spoiler, she's not going to never tweet again. She's going to come back and say something else. We all know that. It's all good. And by the way, remember this as well. Here's one thing I do want people to do. Look, if she comes back, you can say to her, I thought you left. Like that would be totally appropriate. But she also can come back anytime she wants. That's actually another thing I should have said in that other video that annoys me so much. Look, I do think there are certain things she should probably apologize to. Like, I would say, since you did it publicly, even to some of your LEC colleagues, etc. But beyond that, she could come back tomorrow if she wants to, and assuming she can get a job, and she could be good again. So the stupid thing is, it doesn't have to be the door closed. It's up to her on that one.
That is one of the more annoying things that fans do, where it's like, "Oh, I thought you left." It's like, yeah, but it's my life, and I can do what you
change my mind. I know.
Anymore. Just close your eyes,
dude. I saw an amazing one. You would love this because this just shows you how bad like the way media is manipulated now. I saw like a YouTube short because everyone, if you get in that cycle, you can't stop scrolling them for about an hour. The algo's too good in it. Spoiler: we've got loads of shorts as well on our channel. Check them out, Last Nation. Right, if you're on the YouTube. So when you go on there, I saw one that will drive you crazy, Monty, because it goes, Joe Rogan backtracks on Sean O'Malley result. And what they do is they show Joe Rogan, because there was the decision, right, where a lot of people thought the guy who like lost the fight actually like won the fight. It was one of those ones where it was like, you know, there was like wiggle room. And Joe Rogan famously initially, even on his podcast right after, was saying like, I don't know, I did think the other guy won, like, you know, I'm not sure that's right or whatever. And then like 3 weeks later, he even says this on the thing, he goes, you know, he even explains his method in this short, Monty. It's like a 1 minute short. So he gets all this info and he explains in the video, like, you know, oftentimes when I'm watching the fight, you know, you're distracted or you focus on one thing, or maybe if you're doing it at home, you get a call or your kid comes in the room. So he says, what I like to do is I like to wait a few weeks and then go back and watch the fight again without any commentary and sort of like figure out, did I get it right? And he says, and when I watched it, actually, I think that result was right. And I'm like, how is this You've made it sound like that is what an intellectual should do. You should actually go, wait a minute, was I right? This is a pretty big topic. Check it again. No, I was wrong, actually. The other side. That's exactly what we want everyone to. By the way, spoiler, I would want Froskurinn to do that. It'd be brilliant. We could have a good time again.
Especially because these things happen, you know, a fight or a sport, they happen so quickly in the moment. And you're thinking about 1,000 different things. And if you have a chance to slowly go over it later, maybe talk to some other experts, you know, test your theories and come back. And not only that, but admitting that you're wrong publicly and saying like, oh, I made that mistake. People jump all over you for it. But it's like, what did you want, idiots? Did you want somebody to not admit they were wrong and not try and get it right? So you'd rather just them be wrong in perpetuity? It's fucking insane.
Speaking of which, you'll like this, Monty. Because here's where you're about to find out. I might be too legit for my own good. You already knew that, but the fans won't know what I mean by that. Here's why. Because do you know what's sick, Monty? Do you remember a story? You will when I remind you of it. Do you remember the story? Everyone forgets the key secondary detail, where in the off season of 2014 was when I famously, by my friend, was offered the job to coach Fnatic. Literally offered as in, like, it's yours if you want it. I even was told you could take like 3 weeks. You think about it. They kept upping the offer, making it better. By the way, Fnatic actually seemed super legit when they did this. I thought it was a very respectable way they dealt with it all. They were doing a great job. I just decided not to do it. And spoiler, part of the reason I decided, unfortunately, was I did know they were going to get this rookie roster and they weren't going to have Reckless and Expect Kids. So unfortunately, I did also essentially think like, this roster didn't do anything. So famously, because I had the behind the scenes info, Monty, I did 2 videos. One was like something like Fnatic lost the offseason. By the way, later that year, they went 18-0, guys, at a perfect split. And they won both the splits. And then the other one I did, you might remember, was when Roccat got Nuke Duck. You remember? They got Nuke Duck in their team.
Right.
And I was like, oh, shit, they've got Yankor, Nuke Duck. At the time, even Vander was really good. And I was like, this could be... And I did that video that was like, Roccat won the offseason. And obviously, famously, they finished 7th in both splits. And like, just missed even going to the play. And then did nothing. Obviously, didn't go to Worlds, right? Even though they actually had a little run in summer where they weren't bad. And I will say to Nuke Duck, he was not bad that split. Actually had some good individual games, right? Here's the thing, Monty. I would have been wrecked like that this offseason. Luckily, when I was ill was when I didn't publish a video that was called XL won the offseason. But here's why I'm too legit to finish the joke. This is going to be a short in itself. I'm thinking I'll still do it. Even though I will say in the video I was wrong, and here's why. Etc. And because there's two reasons why, and this will jump us into the convo. One, because it's funny. Like, let's be real. You want people to make bold takes like that. There's a very famous one, for example, what you won't know, unfortunately, in English soccer, which was right before Man United had this insane dynasty of like winning most of the Premier Leagues and all the shit. They did it right, not with like old school players. They brought in all these players from their academy squad, and famously, the best analyst and commentator on English football called Alan Hansen said, you don't win anything with kids. And then obviously that was like the one like exception to the rule, and they won like everything with the kids, right? The joke is, I think you do need those, because the point is we can't always be right, and sometimes you are going to be spectacularly wrong when you give enough takes. But I also think, to segue, let's start talking about LEC a little bit. I actually think, and are you ready? This is the bold take for you, Monty. I actually believe that if you look how bad XL is, it's going to sound so counterintuitive. If you look how bad XL is, and specifically, if you look how shocked everyone who's legit in the scene is about how bad the individuals are playing. That's the thing. It's not like they're all playing well and it just doesn't work. Even individually, there's all these, like, the joke is it's like dis-synergy everywhere. Players who it seems like are too many players of the same style or not enough of another style. Like, every factor's wrong. So here's the mad thing though, guys. Because of the player talent, I can tell you, this reminds me of the Fnatic team that got it together. If you ever do come on, and this is why the one factor left for me is the Young Buck factor. If you can ever find a Band-Aid, or maybe even, spoiler, you put in a different jungler or something, there's a world also where they could actually still be good. Look, they're not going to be the best like I thought. I don't think they're going to be number one, but I still think they could be like the 4th or 5th best team if they get it together. I know that's a hot take, but that is the point of the show.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And people misunderstand the point of analysis. Like, the point is not to be correct all the time. It's if something goes wrong, then your previous take serves as a point of contrast and a jumping off point of discussion about what went wrong or what went right. And so, you can't predict the future. Maybe some player falls off a cliff. Maybe some player levels up. Maybe they get a rookie who's absolutely spectacular. It's the same shit. You wouldn't have expected Faker to do as well as he did in his first year of play. That was just a meteoric rise that was unreasonable to predict that any human would do that. And it was obviously unreasonable to predict that XL would be literally last place in the standings. That's why it's so wild that we have to talk about it. But that's also what's fun about the unpredictability.
By the way, the moment that actually made me realize that I would have been endlessly donked on for that video if it had come out in the offseason was the moment they lost to Astralis, who, if you remember, the first week looked like one of the worst teams to ever play in the LEC. Like, when they lost that game, it was like, there's nowhere. You're at the bottom. There's nowhere to go now. Like,
And also for you morons out there, turns out that hate views count for exactly the same number of views as like views. So by all means, let's make some hot takes, and then you guys can just watch them endlessly.
Yes, exactly.
Guess who wins in that one? It's us.
Yes. By the way, what are your thoughts on the XL team at the moment? Because I will say one thing that's a bit depressing to me. This is the conversation I'd like to bring up.
I can't wait. What's the one thing?
The one big topic to me is this, Monty. I think this is one of those areas where fans are too reductive where they use their terminology. Back in the day, famously, like, players in interviews would only use two descriptors. I am aggressive or passive. Like, and that doesn't explain the whole spectrum of how you play. And plus, there's a million different types of being aggressive, or what does passive mean? Does it mean passive in lane and not in team fight? In the same way, I feel like one area the XL one's annoying me a bit, Monty, is it's making people think that, like, players who are good at scaling, you'll notice they'll always do this. Is why LS will always be unpopular to certain people. Noobs and nephews from solo queue don't want to believe scaling is a thing. They think it's what an inferior player does when he can't, have the balls to go for that one. Yeah, so the joke is XL, because of they're playing a minute super slow, they're not winning lanes, they're bad, they don't even get to the late gear. They've made people believe it's just trying to do scaling. It's like, Their problem as well is they have no early presence. It's not just the scaling. The joke is they might even be able to do something if they went to the scaling part of the game. They just don't ever get there, do they? Or they throw the game if they're there anyway.
Or they get advantages through Renekton side lanes, build Prowler's Claw for split pushing, and then basically are forced to group. They are forced to group because if the rest of the team is doing so badly that there's dragon stacking going on or there's a Baron play, and then Odoamne gets CC'd forever, which is just what happens when you have Renekton in a team fight in the late game. And it's not his fault. It's just an inability to actually convert some of these leads into wins. Right.
You know, I always thought that was the whole reason, just to make it a tiny bit abstract, why when everyone used to go in on LS, when he used to say he always thought Renekton was a bad champion, is because that's always what he meant. Yeah, everyone knows in the lane it's good. Spoiler, that's been Renekton forever in League of Legends. It's like at least like even in lane, innit? But the point was exactly what you're talking about. You'd watch it in like the LPL and the LCK, and then Renekton would just go into a fight, and then everyone just turns like, fuck this guy up. And it's just like, you just deleted it. And as you're saying, he wasn't even building a tank build, was he? So he had no chance of that one. He's like gone like that, wasn't he?
Yep, just get kited forever. Get CC'd and kited forever.
I know.
Yeah. So, and the thing about good Asian teams who play Renekton is that they're able to win that lane hard enough that there's a constant pressure point that the other team has to play around. Is it a inherently risky strategy? Yes, it can totally backfire on you, right? And it's a very transparent strategy. You frequently know what the other team is trying to do, and they have to be able to stop you from doing it, which is also difficult. But there are ways to play this champion, and there are ways to play it where it is extremely good. But I don't know if that's
not with
the strategy
XL,
I would be doing.
Exactly.
With XL right
yes,
now.
exactly.
Because the problem with XL is the team isn't coordinated enough to pull off that strategy consistently and to create a win out of it. So eventually they're going to have to team fight, and they're just, even if Odoamne has that large lead, it will just evaporate in that condition. So, I mean, I think it's hard to know what's going on with XL. Did you see VTO's tweet where he said he had lost all confidence and that was the only thing that he had? Which, by the way, is a very French response.
Yes, I always do say, you have to understand that, because I always just say this about SOAS. It's like when they complain a bit, like that's just like breathing, mate. Like that's going to happen. So the point is, like, because I agree, Monty, from knowing the French CSGO players as well, every interview was always about their emotional state and were they feeling good and happier, content, and so I agree that's why they are considered, a passion race as well. Well, not a race, but a people as well, aren't they? Like it's true. When the idea is when he's lost the romance that they can actually be a top team, it feels like maybe he's given up or something, which is sad.
Well, it's also the French condition is the constant and crushing sense of ennui, right? And so I feel like French people are going to get so mad. I feel like French culture is just a perpetual battle against the ennui. It's like there is an existential dread at the core of French being, and you're just trying to distract yourself from that. But then sometimes you have to gaze back into the abyss, and it feels like that's. And then it's like extremely hyperbolic, right? Because everyone else who.
By the way, just as an aside, before anyone gets mad, you think we haven't like dissected the American psyche in competing in esports for 10 years now, guys? I think we've gone pretty deep on that one. Like we're not really going that harsh on the French here, have we? Come on.
Look, I think obviously French players historically in esports have been significantly better across all esports than Americans. Like they're a super good country when it comes to esports and producing top players, but they do seem to ride on emotional highs a lot of the time.
Now, also add in part of it, because they're on emotional roller coaster, is it means that whereas I think some teams, I'll give you an example. I've known some Eastern European teams, Monty, where it was like Kobe and Shaq. Like there was people literally like, fuck you, and then they just win the game, right? That is not the French teams at all. The French teams also are the ones, this is why it's actually relevant. You're bringing this up about XL. The vibe I get is when you also sort of lose faith in a teammate, it's dead. It's over at that point, Like they're not just going to play through it. Like they need to sort of feel like we're all on the same page. We know this is working. Which is like XL seems like the opposite of that, obviously, right now. It's in just the most dysfunction you can imagine.
Yeah. So yeah, and it does feel like really hyperbolic from VTO, but also just, I mean, looking at their presence on stage, they seem. I think this team is boom. I don't know what you do at this point in time, because it just feels like you have to make some sort of change, and at least they have that option on Power Spike yesterday, which you guys should watch, by the way, with me and Digon and Dom. Dom brought up the point that Abbedagge is in fact, a substitute player for XL. And if VTO is in the dumps like this, I think you have to replace him with Abbedagge for this next week because there's nothing to lose, right? The way the new system works, if you're 1-5 heading into the last week of competition, you know,
dice. Yeah,
you got 3 games left. You have to win probably at least 2 of those if you're going to make it out. So you might as well just use this time to roll the dice, give VTO a little bit of a break. There's arguments as well for Gilius coming in instead of Xerxes, because
I think that might even be the best move, mate. That Xerxes one seems like the team's just collapsed around. His style isn't working in this team, mate. There's no late game.
The thing is Xerxes was always a kind of farming first jungler, and I think he probably picked up. First off, he started that way, but second off, he's been on a lot of garbage teams. Yeah, and I don't think he's a bad player. I think frequently he's been the best player on bad teams, but I think because of his experience of basically like the only way he could win was by carrying the game himself and ignoring a lot of what was going on in the map and just like mega farming on Karthus, he maybe doesn't really know or forgot how to play around good lanes. Yes. Because he doesn't seem particularly interactive at this point.
Let's be real. If you have Vethion, you watched him in Misfits, you'd play his lane all day long if you're the jungler, wouldn't you? Like, getting that guy out of lane up in CS, Monty, is just how you win the game if you're in Misfits in it. Like, that's all they did. Get him to a team fight and he kills everyone.
Right, and pick Yuumi, so he plays Akali and there's a Yuumi on him, right?
That too.
I do think that is I said this a lot last year when it came to VTO, but a lot of the wins that Misfits had when they came back from behind were really, really, really enabled by Yuumi.
Oh, they were.
And if there wasn't Yuumi in those games, I don't think Misfits
that was like the ultimate blue shell, wasn't it? That combo. Because as you say, you'd have like a fed Akali, which at the time was one of the strong champions, plus the Yuumi. Like, the joke was like, I don't know how you stop that in a team fight if the guy's really good. Like, that should kill everyone.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there were extenuating circumstances around VTO where there were band-aids that hid, I think, some of the flaws within Misfits, and their record was better because they were allowed to have Yuumi a lot of the time. Not to say that I
definitely do think though that this is like an unusually bad set of form also from him though. Like, even with that said, Monty, he was just so much better than this in past splits. The eye test was mega on this player. I genuinely feel almost betrayed, not by him personally, but in the sense that, like, I thought this was like a slam dunk. This is like a Caps. Like, this is just, they got to be good, you know.
Well, it's also, I mean, if you look at the way that Excel built this roster, clearly they believed in Xerxes because they gave up Marcoon, who's actually been really good on SK. Like,
all right, here we go. Go on, set it up, and I'll give you another bang. I'll give you the bomb. Because here's the thing: I have to divide. You have to understand, guys. I'm like Heimerding. I can't just put a bomb on everyone. I have to decide which bombs go on Best Damn League Show tomorrow after the LBL. Which ones go here? So Zillion. Yeah, sorry. They're both crap champions, aren't they? So, but here's the thing. Here's the bomb for you. Here's what I heard in the off season, and then here's a new piece of info. And these two pieces of info. Woo! That's delicious. Right, you ready? So first of all, I heard in the off season when he became available, they were trying to get Jankos. Right? Imagine this team with Jankos. Because spoiler, you know what I just said before? Like, just focus Vethio's lane, get him and cover for it. Like, that's literally what Jankos is the king of. He just did that for Caps for about half a decade, didn't he? Like, the guy's amazing. And then secondly, are you ready for the next piece of info? This one's really juicy. This one's come out of the oven. It's still moist. There's no burn on it, Monty. It's the perfect brisket. Because are you ready? Here's the banger. I've heard Jankos's buyout is low 6 figures. So if you're Excel, maybe because
that's interesting because they paid a big buyout for Targamas.
Yep.
And they have money. Interesting.
Because similarly, by the way, I'll give you both bombs this week, Monty. You can have both. Dom will just have to have analysis. The second bomb is this. I agree. The Marcoon pickup from SK is genius because he is actually overqualified to be on a team like that. He is someone who has improved year on year. Quite frankly, he's always looked good with his mid and actually looked like he has an understanding of the game. So to me, I remember thinking, like, this is a fucking steal that SK is getting him. Oh, I also heard the same thing about SK, that SK could have had Jankos and that literally, Are you ready for this one? I heard on their one, it would have happened, but it was one of those ones where, like, you get the wrong message like a day late. And so they ended up at Marcoon instead. So the joke is there's about 2 different ways they could have ended up with Jankos on XL. And the joke is, if I were them, I would pull the trigger now because, like I said, remember what I said at the beginning? That could save the roster, mate. Like, look at him right now. You know that game they had against G2? We'll transition to some other teams here. You know the game where G2 were playing against Heretics and the Ike guy, again, was getting all these kills and looking at... Dude, go watch Jankos is playing this game. You can't ask someone to do more. Like, he's trying to, like, cover every spot where the guy is and turn up and do the... And, yeah, look, his team's not as good as G2. He couldn't have won the game. But I still think Jankos has it, mate. I think if you look at on the Heretics team, they're way better than I thought they were going to be. And he's one of the reasons.
Yeah, I think that Heretics... Look, you know, they obviously don't have the best record in the league, right? They're 3-3, but this is a team that I think I put it 6th or 7th.
Yep, I had 7th.
I think we both had them at 7th.
Yep.
Just because we thought it's a very interesting experiment, but we don't know whether this team is actually going to come together with any kind of meaningful synergy. But they've honestly had a lot of upside. I mean, it was very impressive to watch Jack Spectra in that game against Fnatic, where he basically willed them to victory on the Zeri. They were in a really rough spot. Now, they had a much better, I think, late game team composition than Fnatic did, but Jack Spectra pulled off some really impressive team fighting and decision making on the Zeri in order to get them back into that game. Jankos also had a very good game in that one. So Heretics is kind of like low key been a really fun team to watch, like surprisingly fun. They are very entertaining as well. Evie has done exactly what we thought he would be doing within the LEC, which is being his normal 1v1, super aggressive, very entertaining top lane self. And he keeps getting K'Sante for...
Should we do that convo? Should we talk about that? Because here's the thing. I feel like it's a common thing I explain to the nephews over and over again, but I'll do it again. So one thing I've tried to change in my analysis in League, because what I try to look for, Monty, in analysis areas is I try to look for an angle that other people don't take so that I can like round out the show and round out the broadcast. So one of the angles I'm taking, in the same ways you might notice in CSGO, I changed my actual style of judging roster moves based on knowing how much the teams have and how much they paid. So instead of saying like, this is a good player, great deal, if I know actually, wait a minute, you paid like 4 times more. That's not a good deal. Or, you know, someone's doing okay, but they're on mega money. I go, that's not a good performance. So similarly, the factor I need to bring up here on this topic of the Evie one is people are doing the same thing with the Yuumi one from last year, Monty. Like, you moron, just don't give him Yuumi, ban Yuumi. And it's like, here's the problem, guys. Do you think none of these teams have ever played the Heretics in a scrim? Do you think they haven't played them in the scrim after week 1? What that actually implies to me is, 1, either they can handle this K'Sante in the scrim, or 2, he might have some even more deadly shit in his pocket that they're just not wanting to play. Because I don't buy, like, look, I agree, some of these games, there are certain angles I might have taken him off it. I do think he looked mega at times. But I also do think like they're doing, like I say with the Yuumi one, it isn't a universal thing that you always should take it out. Like there are scenarios where you have to play against it based on what else is in the pool. Like, remember that convo we had with Yamato where he explained why at certain teams he would let the Yuumi through and sort of dare them to pick it. Certain teams he would just permabat. So that it's not as simple as just ban K'Sante, even though he has looked amazing for Evie and he's probably the only person who consistently rocks on it, right?
He's also drawing top lane bans. You know, he's drawing Jax bans. He's drawing Renekton bans,
which implies to me he probably just a monster on Jax right now or something. You know,
well, he's always been he has typically been a monster on Jax, and Jax is a monster in the meta. So I think when we consider K'Sante, also I will say like the K'Sante priority is warped because Western teams are bad. If we actually think about, if you watch games, if you want to, here's a good example. I mean, we'll talk about this later, but when you look at the premier match that happened this week, which was Dplus versus T1, which by the way is going to be the premier match in the regular season in the world every time it happens, because we don't really know which LPL teams are super good yet. And outside of JDG, it doesn't seem like there's obvious front runners in LPL. But these two teams are so fucking good right now that until some more LPL competition emerges as their teams start to gel, it's going to be a while. And what we saw in that match was Kana versus Zeus. And how this matchup should go is that K'Sante should be doing very well in the early laning phase. But the reason why people are always saying in LCS or LEC, well, why are they playing Jax into K'Sante? Is because eventually Jax is both better in split pushing and better in team fighting. K'Sante is excellent in skirmishes. Like if you get him at any point in the game into a 2v2 or 3v3, that's where he really shines. But because his kit and his ult is designed to isolate people, right? If you don't get that isolation and you don't force the skirmish, he's not very good. And if you consider the fact that Jax can jump in, be immune to auto attacks, AoE stun people, the way they changed his ultimate, he is very good in team fights right now.
Okay, yeah.
And he's very good. And if you watch T1 versus Dplus game 2, you see Kana's doing very well versus Jax. But eventually, Zeus just becomes a split pushing monster, even though T1 is behind in the early game. And T1 basically wins the game because of split push pressure on Jax, forcing a team fight, and then also having the better team fighting. So it's not that K'Sante, I think, is super broken. I think that you just have to know how to play around him, and that's not happening, right?
Yes. No, I also agree. This is also where I'm sorry. If you do think K'Sante is like, the joke is, if you listen to fans, Monty, by their logic, when it's not banned, you should just blind it instantly in the first pick of the draft. Like, the problem with that is that you're telling on yourself that you don't watch LCK and LPL, you idiots, as Monty just explained quite eloquently.
And nobody's just first picking K'Sante.
No, of course. By the way, Evie sometimes picked him at second rotation, guys. That means they really think they can handle him playing on it. And also, I'll add this in as well. From seeing some of the other Western K'Santes, I also think, mate, that like you also get lulled into it. Remember, a lot of people still use global meta thinking. So if you play 10 scrims, Monty, and only 2 of them are against Heretics, and he's good on it, but then everyone else on K'Sante is actually like, you can deal with him in the scrim, or you can still beat him, or you use a counter, then you're going to think the champion isn't that strong. You know what I mean? The champion itself, you might think, oh, it's not that good, you could deal with it, which is the classic refrain, isn't it? It's why scrims are so different to real games. By the way, that's what kills me as well. You know, when they did that interview with Mad Lions, with El Yoya, where he was making those jokes about like Hylissang and Kazi, how they play in the bot lane and how mad they are. And he basically said that in scrims, they just like, it's either they're up 10 kills or they're down 10 kills. Why is that still a thing in League of Legends? Why is that still how scrim culture works? That when we play scrim, because by the way, Monty, we had this in CSGO at one point in time. It actually used to be famously what held NA teams back, is NA teams would play like this in scrims. In scrims with no pressure, and it doesn't matter the result, you just play super aggressive on the edge. You'd push every single possible like scenario, you gamble constantly. But what people used to say, which changed some of the NA teams and actually made them more disciplined in CSGO, Monty, was we used to say to them, the way you play should be the way you practice. So if you practice hyper aggressive like that, but then in the game, well, of course I'm not going to take all the shot, then you're actually practicing like not the way you're going to play the game. Why is that? Why in Europe are people still having these stories where the bot lane, like, haha, they are up 10 kills at 10 minutes? Like, what game's going to be like that in the actual tournament? Like, why are both teams playing that way? Like, that's almost like you're trolling the scrim to me,
Yeah, it's a big problem. I think overall, it's why scrimbucks are also very dodgy because teams frequently don't play like they do.
Yes.
And, to a certain point, it is practice. Like you need to try new things. And sometimes good teams
sometimes you limit test, yeah, sure.
as they try to do that, or they need to limit test. So just depends on the team's practice philosophy as well. But I agree, you need that consistency. But yeah, I mean, you look at some of these, basically, guys, if K'Sante is so busted, just ask yourself this question. How come, if he's super broken, can he get through 10 bans and 6 picks? So he's literally like the 17th champion off the board at times. Like, what really? Yeah, you think he's that broken? I mean, he's good. He's good, but he's obviously not ban worthy. And he does lose games if if he's not in LCS.
And by the way, I'm not actually sure this. You sort of know him as a friend person. I just know him for info. You know Peter Dunn a bit better than me. Was it implied that Peter Dunn actually did handpick the Heretics roster?
I don't know. I mean, we could just ask him. I'm sure he'd be willing to.
Because all I'll say is, if it is true, then even though, look, I actually don't think this guy's going to be like some superstar player, but I actually, if this was, put it this way, if Astralis had signed the Ruby guy, I'd probably be like, who the fuck's this guy? Like, just Peter Dunn just does it again and again, mate. Like, how many times does he have to trip over and find these people? Like, this guy's playing way better than I thought he could. Some of these games are pretty good.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, they have CL as well, right? The rogue,
that's true. Yep.
The former rogue coach. So they've quietly put together on Heretics like a very interesting coaching staff.
Did you see that tweet from Yankos?
No,
you're gonna love this because this is right in the vein of one of the famous like types of humor we like on the show. You remember back in the day, well, because we were introducing all the Koreans like Ryu, we always used to make fun of the fact that like some of them, because you know the majority of Koreans are like the Confucian culture, like, you know, very respectable and honorable. I do my job, I'm professional. But then you get the ones where they just go, they're the Joker, and some of them are wild, but in a very Korean way, right? And so, oh, sorry, this was actually about Evie, sorry, Japanese player, but a similar concept. It's like it's Asian culture, etc. Right? There's a story Jankos told on Twitter where I don't know if you know this, but CL, the guy who you said, that former coach, one of the details he actually did a video on his YouTube channel. He explained that at one point in time he was homeless while he was like getting his like transition, I think, from college to like becoming a coach. And then obviously as a coach, he went through all like shit jobs and worked his way up. And so when he told this story to Evie, Jankos said that Evie just replied, "Wow, what a trash story." But that he explained then, like later, that he meant sad story. But Jankos said, "I couldn't stop laughing." It's like, that is fucking amazing. Imagine someone going, and then I was homeless and you know, I had to really grind. And then you just turn to the guy and go, "Wow, what a trash story." Just look him dead in his eye, like, "Well, my mistake. Oh, maybe we'll keep it professional, eh?" Like, that's so wild, isn't it? That's so wild. I feel so bad because he was obviously didn't
also,
intend
why
to say
was
as well.
Yankos there for this conversation is my
amazing.
next question. Why was he just...
He's just eavesdropping, isn't he? I know. I bet what he does, no joke, because I bet it is like, because everyone remembers, if people don't know, back in the day, it was also Jankos that brought us the Ryu stories from H2K, remember, when he was in that team. So I think at this point in time, he must just know there's comedy potentially available when you have an Asian player trying to speak in English. So he just, I bet the second they go over, I don't know if he has those modern headphones where you can tap on the side. I bet he just like instantly mutes his in-game sound, like, and he's just like, listen out the corner of his ear, like, what's going on over there? Because if people don't know, I won't go through them all, but I'll give you one. One of my favorite stories of all time, because it's so stupid, is when Ryu joined that Rock Hat team, H2K, sorry, when he was on H2K with Jankos. He famously, Jankos, when Ryu left the room, would just go on his PC and put that faker 1v1 on. And then just, he'd come back like, oh, it's like, it's so stupid, isn't it? I know. That's one of my all-time favorite anecdotes, mate. It's so messed up, isn't it? You just come back to your worst moment. Really, I know. I mean, there was some amazing ones.
First off, like all of the Ryu shit, like the stuff probably used to tweet as well about the stories about coaching.
He was like a mobster, wasn't he? He sounded like a gangster. Yeah. The joke is, we didn't have the term back then. We was like a giga Chad, wasn't he?
That's exactly.
Yes.
The term for Ryu hadn't been invented yet. He was the precursor.
Exactly.
But yeah, super, super funny.
Right, what about this then? I thought another fun team we could talk about in LEC, because what we'll do is we'll just pick some topics. This is what we're going to try and do LEC, LCS, and LCK. So let's just pick interesting topics and go across. We don't do every team, but I thought one we should talk about is got to talk about Fnatic, mate. Because mate, there's still this team's still it's like a funny yo-yo. It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is surprising. I mean, the surprising results are like Fnatic, Koi, and Excel are all this bad. Like, what are the odds that all of them would be this bad? These are teams that I think were unanimously in the top 5.
I did actually make a point on these shows, if people remember, before we started LEC, that I did think the one downside of LEC is I think they've actually diluted the top talent of the top teams into more squads. I think there's like 4 or 5 squads they gave a chance to win, and in the middle is going to be way more upsets. Like, unfortunately, they don't have a team like even the Rogue and G2 teams. They would win most of their games, mate. Like, it was very rare they'd get upset. Like, I think, like, I mean, you've seen it now. The upsets are crazy in LEC. There's not really that many teams that are like bona fide, like all good across the board. Maybe G2 and Vitality. That's about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, even G2 had G2 and Vitality had kind of a rough week-ish because they both lost to SK, which was, I won't say surprising, because as I said last week, the scrimbucks were pretty high on SK. From what I was hearing from a lot of the LEC teams, was that SK was actually like really quite good in scrims, and they didn't translate it in week 1, but I think you can see that this team at least is more than the sum of their parts, and they're getting actually some pretty good performances out of players like Markung and Exakick in particular. I mean, Exakick and DOS have actually...
Certus had a few pop-off moments as expected, which he kind of did last split, but he's continued now, yeah.
Yeah, it really looks like a team that's on the rise, and 3-0 on the week for SK Gaming is obviously puts them basically guaranteed into the next round, especially because they've kind of gotten rid of most of their hard opponents. Like basically, if they beat Astralis this next week, they'll have 5 wins and then they'll be top 8. I mean, they're probably already top 8.
But they probably almost certainly are. I always point this out. Look, you can, as a fan who likes big moves and sensational transfers, yeah, it's not SK is never going to be sexy. But I've told you, because my old boss runs SK Gaming, still is also like almost playing like a semi-GM role in the team with the person who is his GM. He's never going to spend money. He's always going to try and find deals. So, for example, yeah, in the past, he would pay like a treats or someone, or he would have paid Jankos a nice salary. But the others, he's going to go with an academy player, with a player that someone doesn't want, or because they're from Germany, they're going to go with a Prime League player who's showing it off in their region. They're always going to go the budget route. But I'll say it again, like I've said it in the past, mate, this is how you know that OG esports people have to know business, because otherwise they'd have died off in about 4 recessions. The SK Gaming, if you don't know, I went to their recent anniversary. They've been running continuously for 25 years as one of the biggest orgs in the world. Now, sure, they're not at the same scale. If you don't know, they used to be T1 or like FaZe Clan or whatever you want to say now. That used to be SK. They're not at that stature. But bear in mind now, they're trying to do sort of the like efficient GMing approach. Dude, they've shown in this format and the past ones, it works. How many times did they sneak into LEC playoffs when it was only 6 teams? Now they're going to get through this phase just on the first one. Some people maybe thought it would be questionable to come 9th. And then I have to say, when they get to the best of 3s, maybe they can mix it up even there. I doubt they're going to go to much in the playoffs. They could win a series. They've shown it so far, you know?
Yeah. And they started rough, but they're on a 4-game winning streak right now. And they did what had to be done, which is basically make sure that they're going to get through the next round of competition, barring any kind of crazy upset scenario. But with so many, with 2 teams at 1 and 5 already, it seems super unlikely that that's going to happen, because Astralis and Excel would have to go basically 3-0 in the next week, obviously, even to tie up at 4 wins. And I just don't think that's going to happen.
I'll also give credit as well. I do think one of the best pickups they did, like was an underrated one, was getting the irrelevant guy. Because again, if you want your like main think about the classic way you do League of Legends. If you want your mid and ADC to carry, let's just get a guy who's brilliant at fucking weak side. And this guy, you saw this way, he can do his job. This guy can do his job, mate. Bear in mind, he's never had big fanfare, and he has picked one of the worst names of all time to be a professional player, unless you are Faker, as I've always pointed out, you know.
But yeah, I think it's been fun to watch this roster. I'm excited to see both them and BDS doing well, because it makes the league a lot more exciting. Also, just as a side note, for those of you fans who aren't aware, quietly, the LEC changed some tiebreaker rules.
Okay.
I haven't talked about this before, but I looked it up because it was interesting. I was like, well, you know, you're bound to get some ties in a scenario where you only have 9 games, 9 best of ones to decide what the standings are going to be. And the way that they're doing it is actually a strength of schedule. So they
so it's a bit like the Bucult system in Swiss then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Bucult system basically. So what you do is at the end of the round robin, you have the first through 10th place teams, and then you compare the strength of your victories. So you get basically more points for beating the first place team than the second place team than the third place team.
Which, by the way, is going to massively benefit the SKs of the world. That's going to, by the way, that makes it even harder for your Excel. Now you have to essentially beat G. Well, you can't, you've already played something. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be really hard. Yeah.
Yeah, because they have beaten G2 and Vitality. It is going to be very difficult. They lost to Mad Lions, but basically
that is very relevant. You're right. Yeah, that means essentially now you don't have to win the same number of games. You might have to win like one more, or you have to be ahead of them. You have to.
Yep. So yeah, it's a really good system, and it's nice because obviously there were those really stupid tiebreaker rules at Worlds that I talked about in the YouTube video on my channel, and they have really shored that up and actually put some thought into the tiebreaker rules besides game length, and it's nice to see. So I'm a big fan of the new format. I think they did a very good job.
By the way, it just feels like they don't do that anymore, thankfully. But if they ever bring game length back as a tiebreaker, we've got to do, Monty, some sort of stupid skit of like size doesn't matter. It's like it's what you do with it. Because I've always thought that is one of the most egregious tiebreakers of all time. Like game length. Skit. Like imagine because this is a genuine example I would give, guys. That would be like in chess, being like, right, well, the person who won in the least moves, like. It's a chess game, mate. Did I win or didn't I? What strategy was I taking? Who were you? What's your style? Like I've always thought that was one of the dumbest ones. Because the problem is, this is why I hate it, Monty. To someone really dumb, it makes sense. So Riot gets away with it. But to anyone who knows the game, it doesn't make any sense, does it? It doesn't make any sense
at all. The chess analogy is a good one because everyone would just instantly disagree.
It'd be ridiculous, wouldn't it? And logically, think this is the same reason why I hate that tiebreaker. Because when you know it, imagine in chess, if I know that that's the tiebreaker and I'm behind. Now I don't even play a normal last game. I'm just trying to do some mad all-in chess, for fuck's sake. Like, I've always thought that was so egregious, so stupid a premise. But yeah, anyway. So what about this then? The obvious team everyone's loving. So let's talk about Vitality, shall we?
I want to talk about BDS real quick first, and then we'll talk about Vitality because I did have Vitality #1. Hell yeah. I mean, I got a lot of other shit wrong. Ignore the fact that I said Koi, Fnatic, and Excel would also be good, but I was correct about Vitality #1. But BDS, I don't understand. Like, I have to flame the org because Crownshot, or Crowny, I guess, as he's now known, he was on this roster last year.
Yes.
And they just refused to play him and kept putting X-Matty in instead
of him. Like Academy. They made him in Academy,
Yeah, they had him in their Academy team. He's having a fucking great season.
Yep.
He's had some monster performances on this roster. And it was funny.
Let me just say the line. Guys, right now, Crownshot is better than Reckless. But what's new? Now, I won't put the what's new. The what's new wasn't legit. But right now, he is. It's not even unfair.
Well, it was funny because
Reckless averages like 2.5 autos in a fucking team fight at the moment, mate. Like, go on, keep going.
I tweeted this, and Empire, the Team EG analyst and coach, he tweeted back something that I thought was quite a good observation, which is that this BDS team had 4 of these 5 players in their system, either on their main team or in their academy team last year. The only one they didn't have was Labrov, right? And they didn't figure out this roster. Yet it's significantly better than their roster last year, which I think is pretty embarrassing because we're also, I guess, the only
quick mini bomb. This is like a Bomberman. It's like we just dodge it, right? The mini bomb is, I also heard for that roster last year, BDS mega overpaid nearly all the positions. So that made it even more egregious. They were that bad last year. So it is mad that they've managed to sort of like get the right combo together now. I just feel bad for Grabs. He's not there anymore. Like, he doesn't get a benefit from it, does he?
Yeah, I'm sure Grabs he is a good coach, despite what happened in BDS. I'm sure he'll find.
I think he actually showed he was in BDS, mate. Because again, all I'll tell you is I think that roster was bad last year. But man, the amount of games they'd be against top teams getting ahead in the early game or like a half decent draft, like I thought that's where you prove your worth, in my opinion.
You also can't fix as a coach players like once they get into a late game decision making situation. There's actually just nothing you can do to help them once they're in that game.
You'll love this, Monty.
Anymore.
Are you ready? I'm going to give you a nephew take that's going to actually cringe your skin, homie. So I'll have to quickly look which coach it is exactly. Let me double check which coach it is. Oh, it's Vitality. You're going to love this. This is a Reddit take from a nephew who actually, it was upvoted, mate. People really agreed with this take. Are you ready? Because they're playing really well in Vitality, specifically following up on all those like mad ball players, where they don't ever just leave him on his own. They all just follow up, and it's like as a team, they just go in as cycles. That's why they're so thrilling to watch right now. Someone tried to explain that. So then a fan tried to come in and take all that credit for that coach Carter who came from Misfits, because he goes, are you ready? This is so dumb. He goes, that's because before the game, he always tells his team, play together, go in together, stick together. Do you really think it's like fucking a new, like Star Wars, A New Hope, and when it's 45 minutes in the game, like Monty's talking about, that suddenly like he appears like a force ghost in the mind of fucking like Perks and whatever, and he goes like, remember, play together and always go in as a team. Like I was gonna just back off and leave this guy, but now that's not real, guy. The coach can't affect the game at that point at all.
The line has to be use the force, nuke.
Exactly. There you go. That's a point that's, by the way, you know, this is a coach. That's actually the most frustrating thing about League of Legends as a discipline. It's one of the only competitive games where you're only allowed to coach before a single thing happens in the game. You can never at any point, there's no timeout, there's no, you know, that I could get like fucking equivalent to like being able to talk in freeze time. Like, oh, you know, guys, like remember late games comments. You can't do any of that. You actually have to hope that even though it's gonna be 20 minutes ago, that they remember all the stuff you've told them of how to play. Like it's not, the players just play at that point in time. That's why you're right. The coach can only set everything up. The players play at that point. They win the games.
Yeah, and because there's so many different late game scenarios, you can talk through with your players. And to be fair, it was very disappointing that BDS couldn't close out many of these games last year. And truly, they should have been better.
They should have.
But, some players just are never going to take that leap to understanding the differences between solo queue and the actual professional game. All right, now we can talk about Vitality. Can we talk about Vitality? I mean, this is a very exciting team. And honestly, Dom and I talked about this on Power Spike, but it was semi-unreasonable for us both to have Vitality at number 1. But I admitted that in my ranking, that this was just a flyer, that I thought that they would be number 1 in the league, because obviously we didn't know how Photon was going to be performing at the top level.
No one did.
We didn't know how Bo was going to return to the professional scene, even though we know he is fundamentally a very solid mechanical player and one with also very good decision making. But it's different. How would this roster be in terms of communication? How was Perkz going to be? Because even though he was very good last split, he is streaky at times. And even within Vitality's split, like, they should not have beaten Fnatic in that first game that they played, and Perkz played pretty miserably in that game. Perkz has also had some good games, but the thing about Perkz is sometimes he's going to wander into a side lane and randomly die, and you just have to accept that that's part of the Perkz experience, and the value he brings is so enormous in other ways. And he also, I've said this before, he doesn't usually die at bad times. The risks he takes in overextending are typically not at times where him dying is going to lose the game. His problem, which will forever be his problem, but look, it's a winning style of play, so just fuck the haters and just stack the trophies, mate, is what you just said there. Sadly, is one area I always think in League will never be understood by casuals. There are certain times in the game where even if you get caught on the side lane, it was worth it to draw attention, to bring a person. Sometimes it is just worth, it's worth like, oh, it's just even. It wasn't bad. So essentially the gamble's worth going for, because if they don't get to you, then you just get a massive lead, don't you? So sometimes that'll look like, oh, he died. Like, those aren't all ints when you die. Sometimes that's acceptable to, like, not always perfectly leave the side lane or whatever. The other thing is as well, Monty, I feel like, because me and Dom have discussed this to death, so I don't have to do this on Best Damn League Show, because obviously we're both massive, like, Perkz supporters, particularly because somehow, this is mad, mate. It's like me last year with FaZe and CSGO. We keep just looking around like, so no one else is taking this guy as, like, really good. But I guess I'll just take him. I'll just buy the greatest Western player of all time at the low price. Cool. Oh, has he gone up again? Well, some guys have to have all the luck, I guess, right? So we're always famously getting flamed by people who think Perkz is overrated. And what does my head in, Monty, is this. In the modern day, nephews don't come with, like, this is my style and what I prefer, and I just disagree with this. They have, for real, it's like SJWs, mate, they have the blank picket sign and a Sharpie, and they just wait till the game ends and write in whatever you did wrong. Like, it always does that. So what I hate is this. The same fans, Monty, who despise Chovy and Froggen and Larson, because all they do is farm and be up in CS, but don't win every other aspect of the game always. They hate Perkz, whose probably only weakness is not always being that good in lane and then being the best at everything else. Well, bro, do you have to just actually be like the Lord himself coming down from the heavens to get any credit in League of Legends? Like, guys, if you're hating on Perkz, I don't know what you're hating on at this point, unless you're just someone who's triggered by his banter. Like, surely you can see what he does in the game. I agree he's not going to smash everything. He's never, in the same way as we said about Chovy, y'all are talking about Chovy that never existed. He's always been this player. In the same way, like, Perkz has been this player as well. He never was Caps. That's why Caps is contrasted with Perkz. Caps also might just smash the lane, 1v1 kill you half a dozen times and just roam and just... Perkz is more like, you get through the laning phase, you help a player. If you're on the right champion, you win in the team fight, your side lane. If not, like, to me, it was always all the intangibles and the side aspect. And actually, this is why I see him as a captain figure. He sort of knows what hole to plug on his team. Also, just from an objective standpoint, he actually has been a very successful laner so far in the games that have happened. He is first in the league at gold difference at 10 minutes.
He's way better than when he was in Cloud9, guys. He's about 5 times better than that.
He's first in the league at XP differential at 10 minutes. Remember, in Cloud9, he was having trouble laning.
Yep.
He is first in the league in CS per minute right now, and he is getting funneled like quite a few resources. Only VTO and Larson have a higher percentage of CS after 15 minutes than him. And yeah, he's played some lane bully champions like Azir, Tristana, Syndra, but also, you know, part of the value of Perkz is that he's been able to play certain champions such as Cassiopeia, for example, which isn't a meta champion right now.
One of his old classics, though.
Yeah, but is an old classic and also is good into Rise. Yep. So he lost with the Tristana, but it was a good pick when he took it out, and he had a huge CS per minute. It was over 10 in that game. And it was, I think, smart to play it into the Syndra. So you see his versatility, and it is actually translating into pretty dominant lane performances at 10 minutes. He's top of the league when it comes to that. And you do have to consider the champion matchups, but part of Perkz is getting good champion matchups in the mid lane because he's been a professional player for so long and is so smart about the game and has this kind of diversity of picks that he can pull out in order to win. He's also had some extremely good 2v2 synergy with Bo. It is night and day compared to self-made. That's night and day. They really seem to be meshing as a duo, and that again is helping his laning stats. So this team is going very well for a roster that I think we just have to admit probably can't communicate as well as they will be able to in the future. That's going to be in development because they have, you know, a Chinese player, a Korean player.
People did say that. I don't know about Photon, but people did say that apparently Bo's English is like better than you'd expect, or like maybe he was, because remember he did arrive like last split. So as far as I know, he worked on it a lot, I think.
I think Vitality probably has him in English classes, right? If I had Bo on the bench for the entire split, I would be spending some of his time learning English, right?
They did say as well in the offseason, Perkz even said they built the team around him. Like the aim was this guy has to be the jungler, and we're going to build the whole squad around him.
Yep. So, I mean, that's I think obvious what you would do if you were the org, and we've seen many orgs do that in the past. So I'm sure it's getting better. But my point is, even if Bo's English, it will get better still, right? And Photon's English will get better still. And Photon also has clutched out some games. I did not expect in Photon's first game, the one that they played against Fnatic, that he would be aggressively teleport flanking and looking for those angles. Like, these are hallmarks of veteran top laners, and he seems to be playing with a lot of confidence. And what I love about Vitality and what I always loved about Perkz is they will always try to win the game. Like Perkz, when they're down, the Hail Mary play is coming. You know it's coming.
But the joke is, Monty,
spectacular int, but that's the only way they could win sometimes.
Oh no, I'll give you the best reference point, because you know exactly this. We even discussed it on a different scenario recently. Dude, the best example ever of what I love about Perkz' play and all of esports has always been my favorite, like, decisive factors. As you say, you don't let yourself just get gradually beaten. Because to me, when you lose a game where you let yourself get choked out, you also crush your own morale. Because what you do is you just see yourself, like, it becomes more and more hopeless. It's like being in one of those movies where, like, you're in an elevator and the water's coming up to here and you're trying to breathe. Like, it's the worst feeling ever to lose like that. Whereas here's the thing, if you essentially at the end just go, right, I've got to swing wild haymakers or I lose the game, every now and then you connect, mate, and you're going to win a game, and you're going to think, right, at least it's part. So, because I would say, for real, Perkz is the opposite of Kyle Shanahan, the coach of the Niners, because spoiler, this guy just threw an entire potential ring in the bin because his quarterback couldn't throw. He refused to just switch up and go. Like, the joke is, that's exactly the example of where, like, when the chips are down like that, you gamble, you increase the variance, you put in McCaffrey as the running back and the quarterback and have him go the wildcat option all day long. But he didn't do that, did he? So Perkz is the opposite. Like, Perkz would have done that from like quarter 2, mate, you know.
It's like being a boxer or a fighter, right? And if you're losing in points and you know you're losing and you're 3 or 4 rounds into the fight, you just have to go crazy because you have to win by knockout. That's the only thing you can do. Absolutely. Like, you've already lost on points, so you have to just go nuts and try and get the KO. Otherwise, you just guaranteed lose. And that's
I did also do that rant just as a side, because I just like to also bag on Kyle Shanahan, because fucking hell, this guy. He's just because the problem I have with him, by the way, as an aside, is he's like, what people don't know is he's clearly very good, but he clearly has a massive choking problem. It's absurd at this point in time. Like, the guys might have given away 3 rings, mate. It's mental.
All right. I think Kyle Shanahan, he was on his 4th quarterback of the year. I don't think, I don't know how much criticism. He got to the NFC Championship game
the way he played it, though.
Quarterback.
That's why I'm saying he's simultaneously very good, but also a choker, you know.
It's true. It's a John Fox syndrome. If we're going for the other NFL
there you go. Analogy. That's a pretty good one. Here's the problem. You have to actually know the Broncos D-Claw, but if you know, by the way, spoiler, the real missing ring is 2012 Broncos, but let's not get into that. That hurts our feelings if you remember it. Also,
it hurts my feelings.
The other reason I hate that more, this is a quick aside, then we'll skip the NFL if anyone doesn't care. The worst thing about that is this. Have you ever seen the stats Joe Flacco had in that playoff run, Monty? They are like better than like Joe Montana. He had like 11 touchdowns, like 0 ints. And you're like, oh, mate, it's like that guy wasn't even good. He was like, okay. You know what I mean? Like, but if you look at these stats, the joke is he's had like a better playoff run, not unironically, than like Peyton Manning ever has, like Aaron Rodgers. Like, it's actually ridiculous how like overblown that one run is. Like mental. It's actually ridiculous. But anyway, back to the LEC. Because yeah, on Vitality, the key thing for me is this, Monty. Normally when teams start hot, I also worry, like, right, you figured it out early. Now what happens when, look, I'm giving examples here, but they're not really like real examples. I'm giving, what if Fnatic gets it together? What if Koi starts to get, that'll close the gap. The joke is, they actually in Vitality, mate, look like they could get even better. This actually looks like it could just be like one of the best Western teams ever for real. And it's all because of this Bo factor. I mean, I've said this point to Dom. This kind of player should never be available for a team like Vitality. This is like absolutely some crazy, like the joke is like he may as well have just like fucking appeared from heaven and just like come down, like I have come down to teach you the way to. We never going to get imports like this. This is bonkers that he's on a Western team.
Well, that's because he was exiled like Lucifer from heaven from the LPL. So
it's better to rule
the devil, exactly. Right?
It's better to rule the LEC than be a slave in the LPL, basically. Right? That must be the line, right?
He had to commit the crime in order to get exiled from the LPL so that he could rule the LEC.
Exactly.
But also, I think what's interesting about Vitality is that while Photon and Bo have exceeded expectations, don't take this the wrong way if you're a Neon and Kaiser fan, but they could be better.
Neon's looked a little bit underwhelming. I have to say, you know what, Monty? Bearing in mind, everyone's going right up Vethuo's arse right now. Tell you what, bearing in mind Neon's on a way better team, he's looked a bit underwhelming. And bearing in mind, I know that story I dropped last week, that this could have been upset. That's not looking great at the moment. That's all I'm saying. Like, they're winning the games. That's all great, but they're not winning it because of Neon at the moment. And he was, by the way, in Misfits, he was carrying a lot of those fights. He was doing a really great job on Sivir and all that. Zeri, like, he was looking pretty good last split.
Yeah, it's not to say that Neon has been a miserable player or anything of the type. It's just that we know that Neon can be better than this. And we know that Kaiser can be better than this.
Yep.
And so if these two guys step up, this is a world-class team. I mean, this is a potentially
this is one of the ones that you're going to take to Worlds and see how they do the run. Obviously, we're a million miles from that. We're just projecting forwards. But this would be one of the teams you'd love to see in a fucking round of 8 of the World Championship. Because remember, this is why I'm probably going to do a whole video on this. People don't get how momentous this Bo angle is. Think about this. There might be a world in the quarterfinals of Worlds, rewind this and put it in a clip if so, where you have the better jungler against an Asian team. What? Excuse me? Like, when's that ever happened in League of Legends? That could happen now because, spoiler, you have the Asian jungler. Yeah, that's the joke. The joke here is that it would have been a nightmare for you to face Bo if you had, like, a normal Western player. You're going to have Bo. That could be OP as fuck, guys. And also, I'll be real. The thing I always do love super mechanically strong junglers because they are just when they work, they are the most OP game changer in League of Legends because you just win the early game, don't you? You just fuck the other jungler up. Like, there's so many benefits can come from it. The problem is this as well. Like, let's be real. I'll throw this in there, Monty. I'll see what you think of this. Another problem I think a lot of people have now that Bo is in the league is he accelerates the game too much. And so because he's so ahead and his team's ahead, guys, most European junglers aren't that good at team fighting anyway. So by the time you get there, you're behind. Like, you're not going to win. You're not going to win. In fact, I've always said that's one of the things. Like, there's not that many junglers that are like gods in team fights. It's not like some SOFM character who's just like absurdly good,
And Bo's Graves in team fighting is
he's a bonkers, isn't he?
Beauty. It's so good.
And remember, here's another update for you. You know how in the first week, it's almost like he's trying to show off all. Dude, what champion doesn't he have? Because remember, you'd think from the score that they're just playing, all his picks and all that. He's not like some Evie on one chat. He's playing everything. He's playing fucking Maokai.
And he's doing it with different styles. Like, he's actually playing to the strengths of the champion. It's not like he takes one style and applies it to all champions. Yes. He's extremely smart about how he shifts up his style to suit the champion's strengths, which I think is really good. I mean, he is a phenomenally talented player.
That's so rare. Like, I will take a little bit of credit. I do think I actually figured that premise out earlier because I actually did a video. I think it was in like something mad, like season 5 or season 6 months. It was inspired by Peanut, who you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And it was called the mechanical jungler fallacy, which was that what we all did was we all thought if your mechanics are cracked, well, the rest of it's just figuring out decisions. So we all thought you must be the absolute best. But what you found is sometimes it was just that your mechanics are cracked, like early Peanut. And any game where you sort of don't get ahead of your focus fuck up, you just lost, and those brain juggles eat you alive in the wrong meta, mate. So the key thing for me, again, is this on Bo. This guy looks like there's not even going to be a meta switch that's going to limit him. He's just going to be doing it all, mate. So I genuinely think, I know it's only BO1s, but I'm mega hyped for this player. Now the hype is justified, guys. It isn't just the off-season. I'm looking in solo queue. Dude, he's doing it in the actual games now and against everyone.
And yes, they lost to SK, but I also think that was a trap game because they were playing G2 the next day, and we are going to have upsets when every week is a super week now, guys, at least in the first stage of the LEC, which is one of the downsides, the very few downsides of the format.
Yep.
But also, as we've discussed, I actually don't think it's that bad because all you have to do is get top 8 to get to the best ofs where you're actually going to show your shit. So if you can't figure out how to get into the top 8,
you can lose a game a week, basically. You don't have to really do all 3 games like you're saying. You can sort of do like the old things, win your 2 games you through. Because that's the key thing, as you're saying. Remember, because of where SK was in the hierarchy of the league, I doubt they started with all the scrims. So I agree with you, Monty. You were almost certainly focused on G2. Like G2 and Vitality will be in scrimming the whole time, I assume.
Here's the thing. You can have an under 50% win rate. You could be 4-5 and you're still likely to make top 8 in this format. So it's really not terrible.
No. It's very forgiving. Like, put it this way, if XL don't make it, it's all their own fault. They've got no one to blame.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, exactly. So I do think it was a bit of a trap game, and especially because the next day they came out and completely put G2 in the dumpster. Like, that was not a close game. That was complete dominance.
Mate, that was a thing where one thing that I give props to Dom for, because I like to cross-pollinate some of the analysis here. One thing he said on Best Damn League Show was after week 1, obviously the Yike guys' scores were unbelievable, Monty. Like every bloody game he had like 8 or 9 kills. Like, what? You're like a rookie jungler in G2. But he did say if you watch the game, obviously he comes from a jungle background himself and he's still an active player, Dom, right? But he said if you actually watched how he played though, it wasn't like Bo. He wasn't just like the solo cat. It's like he also did have setup. He did have like certain scenarios where he made a mistake, but he had good teammates. And all I'll say is this game showed you there are levels. Because, mate, Bo fucking gapped this guy. He was like, welcome to the LEC. I've only started myself, but welcome. No, I'm the daddy now.
I said this on Power Spike as well. It's not that Yike has not been a good player, because he has been good. But as I said last week on this show, he has benefited enormously from a very good coaching staff doing set plays in the early game.
Yes.
And so he basically has had some games where it's been scripted. It's like, okay, we do this invade, or, we have this pushing lane and you're going to take advantage of this. Like, here's your initial path and you're going to go ahead and make this gank. And because Dylan Falco and the coaching staff on G2 is very good.
I think they're mega at tailoring to the team's strengths and weaknesses. That's been one of his strengths the whole time, yeah.
And because, like, I feel like it's a smart thing to do as a coach if you have a rookie jungler to try and set up these things to ease them into professional play and give them advantages. And Yike has made mistakes when the script goes away, because the script has to go away at a certain point in the game, and he has gotten picked off and he has died. And I think you really saw the difference, as you're saying, Thorin, with Bo and Yike within that game, because Bo's understanding of the professional game is obviously significantly better than Yike. He styled on him.
Yes.
And you have to have those games as a new player, right? You to learn and improve. And I think Yike has been surprisingly good, but we also have to admit that the coaching staff and the game plans that G2 has had coming in have made him look probably better than he is.
The only thing is, though, I did see, like, people would try, when people do that awkward thing where they try and make combo alias names where you mix the 2 names. And I saw some fan on Reddit was like Boturks or something. That sounds like buttocks, though. So that's no one. You don't want a whack nickname because that would imply they're cheeks. If they're mega, aren't they? They're not Boturks. So you got to come up with something else for that one. Come on, guys. You can do better than that. Come on.
I'm just looking forward to the Vitality T1 where we have the boner matchup in the jungle.
There you go. Okay.
I mean, how can you not roll with that one? It's inevitable. Okay. We are going to see that matchup probably at MSI, right? We're going to get to see the boner matchup.
Exactly.
What else we got in the league? We talked about G2 a little bit. Oh, also, I have to say, the other thing that is understated about Yike is that Mickey X is fucking unreal right now. So I think Mickey X
He's an MVP candidate, I think, mate.
Significantly with Yike's performance.
Do you think so? Of all the play, he should be like an MVP candidate right now, probably. Yes. Mickey X. He's having some Smurf games, isn't he?
Yeah, both he and Hylissang have been quite good. You know, they're Mickey X wasn't in those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. He wasn't in the dumps like Hylissang was towards the end of last year. Like Hylissang's summer playoffs and Worlds performances were pretty bad.
Yes.
Mickey X wasn't his former self, but he also
he was still good.
Wasn't he was still pretty good on when he was on XL, but man, he really has had a resurgence. Looks great with Hansama in the lane. Has looked great on the roams. Has been
Summer also looks very good as well. Fair play. He actually has come back to form. Yeah. Like now, like the spoiler is, unlike LCS, now his Draven is a threat, of course.
Yeah, because he's
even tricking motherfuckers in a Patrick to think it's the champion, because you couldn't play it like that, mate. Get the fuck off that champion. How dare you run that bot lane with Patrick and Targamas with the same champions as Hansama and Mickey X? That was a disgrace. The joke is you made them look like gods with the same exact fucking picks.
But yeah, Mickey X, I think, is definitely MVP in the running. Early stages, obviously, in this winter season, but he and Bo probably would be the front runners at the current point in time. But yeah, he's been really good. He's created a lot of pressure himself. Makes it a lot easier for a player like Yike. So Yike's been good, but he also has had significant help, and that's totally fine. That's just what a good team will do, right? Credit to G2.
By the way, I agree with you at the end there. Credit to G2, not just Yike himself. By the way, credit to him for coming in the league and playing that. But I agree with what you've said. They have actually done a job now where, like, the joke is Dylan Falco is like the EU version of whatever the EG coach and stuff were doing. How good is this guy with rookies? He had Flackhead in the same start. Stargamus, like this guy with rookies. It's mental how many times I've seen him like cover the weakness. So you actually just start even overrating. Like I'll give it right now. I've overrated the fuck out of Stargamus, it appears. Whereas actually now the joke is maybe he was hiding that guy in lane. Like, bloody hell. I mean, the joke I thought was Flackhead was bad, but like, look, I don't think either's great, but fucking hell, like that guy looks night and day. Like the joke is Targamas now looks like the greatest rip-off sale of all time. Like, oh, these idiots are paying this. Can you believe it? Like, it looks terrible, doesn't it? Dylan Falco looked awesome.
I don't think Targamas is bad. He did have a Hylissang-esque Nautilus performance this last week where he just chain inted, but I think this team is mental doomed.
They are.
I think it's just
it's not the players. It can't be when you have players of that level, it can't be that.
This is like what happened with Nongshim Red in LCK last year, where you look at this roster and you wouldn't have said Nongshim Red is going to win LCK. That would have been
like the 6th best team or something, or you're the 5th or something, right?
They should have been a competitive playoff team with that roster. It wasn't like XL where it's like, this could be the best team in the league.
Yes.
Just looking at it on paper, you wouldn't have said that about Nongshim Red, but somehow they just were miserably bad, like worse. That, you know, the debate was, are they the worst team in the league? And this is an LCK season that had a lot of bad teams in it. Like,
by the way,
there was a pretty clear distinction between the
was
top
one of the most
bottom five,
like differentiated ones of all time. By the way, I've even just realized how mental this is because it's even more silly. So when I was saying, like, he saw like an EU version of Pete Dunne, it's like, wait a minute, Peter Dunne is from EU and it's Dylan Falco's from NA. Like, what are we doing here, guys? What the hell are we doing in this game? You know what I mean? Like,
we need to repatriate
exactly.
Dylan Falco.
Exactly.
The LCS. No, I think G2 will continue to be a good team, especially as Yike gets more experience. So I think from a European perspective, honestly, that both G2 and Vitality are very exciting teams to have at international tournaments. There is a universe this year where, especially because MSI will take the top 2 teams now, where both of them go and both of them are reasonably competitive.
That'll be fun as fuck. Remember, guys, I told you before, and I am convinced I'm going to be right about this, Monty. Think about what Monty's setting up, because the problem before is I didn't have the names to put into the dry run, so you could see my point. You know, I said when we discussed the formats, I think at the end of the year, it's going to flip, and MSI will be considered a better tournament than Worlds, because it has a double Elim playoffs. Imagine this, guys. Imagine in the playoffs, you get to see Vitality and G2 play against top Asian teams, and there's a low bracket.
FlyQuest.
And there's a low, and maybe even one good NA, and there's a low bracket. Like, this is going to be what we all wanted, the IPLs of the back. We're getting it back. It's actually going to be baller. I know everyone's not ready because they're still thinking, it's MSI. It isn't. This is actually going to be a baller tournament. I'm convinced of it, mate.
The problem is, Thorin, is that as excited as I am about this, I do realize that It's like I've just been put in prison for 10 years and now I'm just grateful to get out.
There's a joke, you'll like this. There's a joke on one of Eddie Murphy's stand-up specials where he says, it's like if you're a guy who's been in the desert starving and then someone just throws you like a cracker. You're going to be like, what is that? Saltine? That's what it's like. It's just a cracker, but you're just so desperate for sustenance. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like the fucking Shawshank Redemption.
Dude, it was like when they revealed Swiss system for the major, and the joke is we're all done with Swiss system in CSGO. Because that's the same thing. That's like, right, to improve morale, we're only going to give you half beatings from now on. Like, oh, half beatings? That's like what getting Swiss system in Worlds is like. Still not the best, is it, guys? Like, it's still bad.
I do have to check myself because you start talking about it, I'm like, oh, I am excited about that. I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a second.
It could have been like this all along, I know. That's why it also so hard. You know when fans always go, why are you so negative about Riot? Because it's not like they're wrong, but they take 2 years. They take like 8 years to become. So then you all want me to go like, well done. Well done to Riot. But by the way, 8 years implied you just made the wrong answer 8 years in a row. You didn't have to stick with one. You just every year, wrong again. And at the end, you sort of get a C, and I'm supposed to put that on the fridge like, this is art. Put this up, look at that. He could be someone one day.
It's like you're under
this cat has the proper number of legs. Look, 4.
it's not even like it's not a simile. We are under an authoritarian government in Riot. We just are. That's it.
We're literally under their fist. Their mass. I'll never get over how mad. Still to this day, thematically, the image is a giant red fist just smashing you in the face. It looks like POV coming into yours because that's the joke. Like I've always said,
that was the POV of my life, man.
That's the joke. That is like the 1984 line. You want a vision of the future of League of Legends esports? Imagine a giant red fist smashing you in the face over and over again forever. The jokes write themselves. This has to be a simulation.
But it's the same way that authoritarian governments work, where they're like, oh well, so the prison, the work camp is not quite so bad now. Here's some bread.
Yeah,
you're like, yes, the government rules.
Oh, mate, I'll give you a random detail here. If you ever read like Solzhenitsyn and stuff, in those like actual like gulags and stuff, sometimes even if you were like the like sort of traitor gulag prisoner who worked like with the guards, all you would get was like an extra piece of potato, 1 piece extra in your stew. That's how bad the conditions were. And you were going like, this is totally worth it. You're like, dang, that's how bad the scenario is when that becomes like, oh, I'm looking forward to that piece of potato today. Like,
so yes, I do have to check myself because it does feel like getting extra rations in the prison at times. But I am excited about MSI. And I do legitimately think that this is quite a good format.
Yeah.
Even compared to other esports, I think it's actually one of the best formats in esports now.
And remember, it's way less likely we get like the silly Mad Lion scenario, because now you have to actually go in a fucking double limb bracket, mate. You've got to do some work to get to those MSI spots now. So like that's going to be baller. It's not like going to be like Worlds where we have a worthless. In theory, it's going to be the 2 best teams go.
Yeah, and I also like the way that they set it up for LEC because they had to find, because their system, their format is now so different. So the winter champion is the second seed and the spring champion is the first seed. And if they're the same team, then it goes to, I think there's like it's based on points that you win. So I think it's good. I think it's a good format.
I think they should just not ignore wins and losses and just qualify whoever had the least shortest game time. They should just be the MSI team. I mean, logically, it's the best way to determine which team goes on.
Why even play MSI when we can have shortest game time just wins the tournament from all regions?
You just get sent the trophy. Exactly. Just send it off to you. Right, let's switch regions then. So you want to do LCS?
Sure.
Because as you alluded to, like spoiler, we were right. What do you know? We were right. Like, this is how I know y'all don't watch the LCK. Because one, all the Reddit comments are like, this Prince guy is carrying, like, against LCS, he was carrying against LCK, you morons. You look at one of the best ADCs in the world. And then two, they're also like, this Vicla guy, what are you talking about? We've all been watching him on KT the whole time.
That's because they never watched. The fans in the West, they only watched the T1 games.
Yes.
Or the Damwon games or whatever. And they never actually watched Live Sandbox or KT. So they wouldn't know what was going on within those rosters.
Because these guys just look like, look, the Vicla one, I wasn't as sure, will it work, will it not? Because I mean, it's also import mid lane, it can be a coin toss. But mate, what more could you ask of Prince? That looks perfect so far. It's looking awesome, isn't it? Like, the joke is he is just going to beat everyone. He just looks mega.
I felt bad for Spawn.
I did as well, mate. He couldn't do anything that game. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't his fault, mate.
The diff is just so enormous that I mean, I don't think NA has ever had an import player in their prime like they have with Prince. It is truly an aberration. Maybe Bjergsen would be the early days.
The problem with him is he wasn't maybe as sick in Europe, you know. Like, yeah, I don't think there's ever been one who came over and was this good, like, out the gate.
Yeah, he wasn't as good. He was still, when he was on Copenhagen Wolves or whatever, you know, he wasn't the same level of dominance. When you looked at LCK, there was a very, I mean, arguing that Prince was the second best AD carry behind Ruler was reasonable.
It was a very reasonable take. Yeah,
it was very reasonable. And honestly, he was also asked to do a lot more than Ruler was, because
he was in the Uzi I seat. If people don't know, he would just have to carry the whole game, and he had all the resources. He would just do it.
Yes, because Dove was such a weak, Dove was the weakest of the weak side top laners, and they funneled so many resources into
By the way,
Prince was like the highest economy player in the entire league.
If you're going to call, again, we need to do a whole class to explain to pros how to select their alias. Because if you're going to be a top laner who's not that good, you're weak, you're not going to want 1v1 kill the guy, you're probably going to lose later. Don't call yourself Dove, the universal symbol of peace.
I mean, the funny thing is that he's now in LPL. He swapped back to mid lane, and he's looked really good in mid lane in LPL. So he might actually be one of the better mid laners if his trend continues within LPL. So that's funny.
To bring it back though, like I mean, I can't remember on the one. Did you actually put EG as your number one team in NA? Did you, when we did those?
Yes,
rankings?
I did. Yes, I did, because I thought.
Yeah, go on.
I just thought it would take some time for this roster. Like, EG retained most of their identity, right? Yes, they made the argument was this. Okay, EG made a swap from Someday, you know, to Someday from Impact. That's kind of the same. Like, they have a similar play style. Maybe it's a little bit worse, but they made a pretty significant upgrade at AD carry with FBI. And so their play style should be basically the same. And they were on the up and up, obviously, coming off of last year. And I thought it would take FlyQuest just a little bit longer to get good. Also, I knew that they weren't going to have Isla for week one.
Oh, right. Yes.
And so I thought, because the thing was, what are the standings going to be at the end of spring? Right, which is that I thought EG would take first place, but that obviously hasn't happened. EG mega through a game, and
to bring it back though, like, this is that, just to finish the FlyQuest thing, this is why I actually I had FlyQuest as my number one team, because just on paper I thought, like, mate, if this works, this roster's bonkers. Like, people, again, because I knew the Westerners don't know, they don't even know what's coming, mate. They think this is like the Ruby one in LEC. Like, wow, you've got like just a token Korean who, is he good? Is he not? Like, we know this, we know these guys are good. We've already seen it. And the genius of that roster, obviously, as everyone points out, is the only non-Korean is Speaker. Like, that's why I saw LS made that joke when Team Liquid played against FlyQuest. LS just said, like, lol, Speaker is the only non-Korean in this game. It was like him, and then 9 Koreans were in the match. So the point I was going to make was, I had a similar thing in Europe, Monty. It's why I had Koi above Vitality. It's like the Vitality pieces on paper should be the best, but will they come together? Koi's got most of the old... It was basically the same scenario, just change the top laner. But if you look at it now, mate, FlyQuest, as you say, they are going to be fun at MSI if they keep this up. They look really good. They're far away the best to me.
You know, the other question I had was, clearly Vicla was going to demand a certain amount of resources on this roster, even though we knew Impact probably wouldn't. And so is Prince going to be able to perform with a smaller sliver of the pie? And the answer so far is yes, like very much yes. He's been really, really good.
And remember this as well. Everyone's going to forget this detail because they're focusing on the stars. Dude, everyone flamed the fuck out of that Winsome guy last year. By the way, justifiably so in the spring. He looked terrible. He broke down. Most people would say, like, he should never be an LCS again. It's just fine now. It's not even a problem anymore.
He's not even supposed to be the starter. So, I mean...
No, he's doing okay, though. It's not terrible, is he?
Yeah, and it's also, I'm sure it's a big relief for the FlyQuest management and coaching staff that they know that if Isla isn't good, they have Winsome as a backup. Like, they have redundancy.
The reason why LS in the first place had Winsome in Cloud9 is because he can speak Korean, right? So that's like the mad upside you get from that. Imagine your sub player can just speak Korean when you have all these Koreans on the team. That's a pretty. By the way, Papa Smithy's killed that angle too. If he's the one who got him, like, what a great backup to pick.
Yeah. So, I mean, really good job by the FlyQuest management for sure. This team, they used their resources, I think, very effectively, knowing that they were finally going to have money. And I've talked about this before with FlyQuest, but FlyQuest was a team that was well GM'd before by what's his ID? Swagasaurus Nick, Nick Fan. Because they were like making finals with.
They finished second in that like online era, if you remember. Yeah,
yeah, with like garbage money, basically. So
and like recycled players. Remember, it was like Paul Belter and fucking Wild Tur. I don't know if it was Wild Tur off the top of my head. I think it was. I think it was like all the recycled players, wasn't it?
Yep. So, and then obviously Papa Smithy had more resources and made 3 finals in a row and won 1. So the combination of these factors has been really effective. And then we also said this, but it bears repeating again. How the fuck did this roster get Song, the reigning world championship coach, who, by the way, had to do an insane job of coaching to take that garbage ass DRX team to a world title? I mean, he clearly has a large degree of responsibility for the performance of that roster at Worlds. And yeah, he randomly is an NA now. I can't believe that LCK let him go. I can't believe he isn't an LPL. It's unbelievable that he is an NA again.
So, mate, this guy must have he must have done some mad like soul searching that he's willing to come back to NA with the way it went. Because remember, he joined and it just went downhill. Like every team he was on, it got worse almost. Like, mate, I'm actually amazed he came back because it's looking awesome. Like the joke is, how did you get the world? There's another thing. You got the world champion coach in LCS. Why? You know what I mean? Like, what?
How is that? I mean, that's a very smart pickup. They just knew the players that were going to be available, and then they saw Song just didn't have a team, I guess, and just swooped in and took it. They remember, really capitalized on this situation.
Let's be real. It's not like FlyQuest outbids an LPL team. So someone else could have had this guy if they wanted him. Like if someone came with millions, I'm sure he has to say yes eventually. Anyway, right, here's the thing, Monty. I forgot before we switch regions, I wanted to do like a quick 5-minute break. So what I'll just say is this. You know, in the past, one area we always meme about is we did a terrible job, like setting up the stuff around it. Because basically what me and you did is we were people whose craft was our content, like knowing the game, how to talk, how to present it. So because we spent all the years building it up, we didn't do a very good job, unfortunately, setting up things like having ad reads, having like proper sponsorship. So one thing we've done now is you can actually be a Twitch sub, right? You can subscribe to this channel that we're on now. And that's another great way, by the way. If you want to support this channel, you want to support the content, if you like watching it live, there's a great feature to use. So I would just say, if you're up for it, we would appreciate it. Now let's do a quick break and we'll be back and then we'll talk more LCS and then we'll do some LCK as well. Yes. But the one other thing I have to say on the FlyQuest one, we said it also when the roster was made, but it is the other part that I will focus on. Papa Smithy, give him mad props here. Not only in 100 Thieves did he do sort of good jobs balancing the team out. I know it shouldn't be like you get a medal for this, but the LCS is so bad at GMing. You do get a medal for signing carry mid lane at ADC and just put Impact as your top laner. I know the others are like, how does he figure it out? Like, look, essentially you are in the dunce class, but you've aced it, mate. Like, you've done everything you could do because that's the perfect player, isn't it?
In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, right?
Exactly.
And thank you guys for the Twitch subs. We can't do the shout outs because obviously it ruins the VOD and the podcast, which most 90% of people watch. So we do appreciate the live stuff, though. Just know that in our hearts, we do appreciate it, even if we can't give you the shout outs that you guys would normally receive on the stream. So thank you. And we will introduce new ways for you to support us. And we do appreciate it when you guys do it, especially because, as we've talked about in many, many different podcasts, particularly the Four Horsemen, the biggest problem with esports is that the fans are not actually financially contributing to the health of the scene. You guys get everything for free, and then you never pay. What you guys do is you go to Tyler One and you just chuck millions of dollars at him and you won't spend a single
Then you go,
dime.
why does the LCS suck though? I know it's mad, isn't it? It's true. It's true.
you guys will literally simp for streamers, but you will not fucking pay a single cent to esports content. We have given you guys like a decade of free ass shit. So thank you for those of you who want to support us.
It's like what Richard says, because Richard also knows now you just have to say this stuff. Like, you can't just be too cool for school anymore. Those days have passed. What Richard says is he goes, go on, just give me the Twitch Prime. It's free. And he says, you were only going to give it to Pokemon anyway. It's like, this is like the perfect line.
1 second of her attention.
So fair play. And the joke is, like, yeah, you're not even going to get read out on her stream either way. I don't worry about it.
Like, please notice me, Pokemon. But also, I mean, come on, guys. Like, we provide you so much entertainment, hours and hours. Like, we do appreciate it when you actually come back. And I love you guys because the esports attitude, I love the Europeans. They're like, I can't deal with the LCS. It just has so many ads. The ads are in the game. It's the Red Bull power play and, you know, the Bud Light Ace. And I'm like, motherfuckers, if you paid money for this product, we wouldn't have to have all these ads in the game. So you are shooting yourselves in the foot by not supporting esports financially. You guys will pay $20 a month for Netflix, but you'll watch twice as much esports as you watch Netflix. You're like, why would I pay for that? Come on, get your shit together.
Like, the real joke, if you want to make it a mad indictment, goes like this, because you've got to frame it to look ridiculous, Monty. They'll pay for like Netflix and stuff like that. And if they were to put a show like Players on Netflix about a fake version of the LCS, you would watch it and in a sense pay for it through the script, but you wouldn't pay for the real LCS that it's all based on that we're there for. You know what I mean?
You guys bought Paramount Plus to watch Players, but you will not spend any money. Actually, the joke is I don't think anybody watched Players because they put it on the LCS YouTube for free, and also it has no views. So I don't think that many people watched it. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, thank you. You guys have been subbing a lot in the chat. Really appreciate that. And that support does go a long way. And if you guys don't want to directly support this, I'm just going to put this on the table for you. Our shows we're in a lot of different conversations for sales. We are going to start to have more sponsors on these shows soon as we start to close that. One of the very, 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 very best things that you can do is actually buy from our sponsors and show that our fans are willing to support them.
So if you want the product, like, don't just do it
obviously
for
only if you want to. But
it's a great way you can help
these things. If you have been thinking about buying some of these things anyway, and you're like waffling on the fence, it is incredibly helpful if you guys purchase those products.
Probably the single sole thing that will actually help us the most. Yes.
So if you love independent, non-developer controlled esports coverage, unfiltered commentary, that is how you guys can help, truly. So we will mention that when we start to have some of these sponsors, which will be soon. And we do have some exciting conversations, and we want to also have sponsors where you guys like the product. So we're keeping that in mind as well, and stuff that we like ourselves. So there you go. We know you guys are older too. You guys are sitting on these fucking 6-figure computer programming salaries. Like, pony up. Let's go.
Right. The team I want to talk about now, listen, they made the team to get this attention. They either win or it has to be about being talked about. It's got to be 100 Thieves, hasn't it? That's the one everyone was waiting for. That's the one everyone's hyped for. Doublelift's back, sort of trash talking.
Yeah, I mean, they did get dumpstered in their first match. So, but at the same time, Doublelift looked really good against Immortals. I don't know what that means, that he puts Tactical in the trash can. To me, that means nothing. Tactical has been in the trash can for his entire career. I was a Tactical hater back when he was on Team Liquid, when people thought he was good.
Did you see? I don't know. Obviously, I don't expect you to see every tweet, but I actually did a tweet today because I was reading around and it reminded me of a quote I'd forgotten, which was when Core JJ had Tactical. There was an interview where he once meant, or like some context, where he once said that Tactical's like the next ruler. And all I said in my tweet was, that might be, for real, the most inappropriate comparison or reference ever in League of Legends history. Because you took Ruler, that's the point. You took Ruler, the best ever, play the absolute limit of the edge of the damage curve, and don't take much damage, use maximum to play around your team, don't even require all the Uzi resources, but still always be relevant in a team. But you took the best possible safe ADC, but still really good, and you compared him to Tactical, who is like a shit Jackie Love, just inting into fights. And and was notoriously bad at in-team fight. Like, listen, CoreJJ, I know you are a multiple-time MVP, world champion, but you'll just be saying stuff for the sake of saying stuff, bro. Like, listen, say that shit to him in the locker room. Tell him those lies. Don't lie to my face, motherfucker. That's egregious. Yeah, you are aware. Remember, he even was the one with Ruler who won Worlds. Like, how are you going to do Ruler like that, homie? This is Ruler.
Also, you know, people have eyes and can make decisions for themselves and make judgments about Tactical's play. But tactical aside, because Immortals was very disappointing. We had another classic
across the board.
We had another classic, you know, Immortals performance versus TSM, where it's like they could have won that game and then just decided not to, which was the story of Immortals versus TSM last year. So they haven't gotten that out of their system, despite the fact that they changed 3 of their players. But when we come back to 100 Thieves, obviously their debut against Cloud9 was pretty miserable. I do think that their composition was just fundamentally unplayable, but holy moly.
In what context? What was the most egregious partying?
I don't think that you can play.
I mean, the Azir's a bit wild, but
the Azir support was, look, they tried something. I did look at Busio's performance within the context of solo queue, and he had been practicing it. So it was clearly something that they had prepared, and it was kind of a flyer to see if they could outmatch the Ashe Heimerdinger lane. But I also think, like, what do you do with this team composition? So you have this Varus, right? So first off, I don't know why Doublelift didn't take cleanse in this game. He literally is playing into an Ashe lane and he doesn't take cleanse. To me, that was insane and really came back to bite him later. I also think that who is supposed to peel for Doublelift, their only form of peel is an Azir ult, which you get one time, and you're playing into Wukong, Cassante, Akali. Like, good fucking luck. Good fucking luck with one Azir ult peeling for this Varus. And then thirdly, you are playing a triple melee topside. You're playing Sylas, Viego, and Jax into Ashe Heimer. How do you stop that? If Cloud9 is first on an objective and they're set up, how do you walk into that? You can't. So I think the composition was just bad. Fudge obviously just put tenacity into the grave as well in the top lane. He had an individual. This is when you look at Cassante's strengths, when we talk about how Cassante is a good champion, and you see the strengths here because Fudge was playing it in skirmishes the whole time. The way he played Cassante very well. The way he was forcing fights was by breaking them up, getting into the jungle and like 2v2ing people. He wasn't really fighting as part of team fights for a lot of this game. And that's the way that Cassante really shines. So he does look OP in that situation, because here's the thing, guys, a good champion in League of Legends should look OP when they're played properly. Right? Yep. That's the whole thing about styles and champions being able to do different things well, is if you're maximizing the value of that champion, it should look very good. Now, Cassante's probably needs some nerf.
Probably still overtuned, but it's a new champion. What do you expect? You know, we all know how it goes. We all know how it goes.
But I do think that I like his design at a fundamental level, and I do think that even in his perhaps overtuned state right now, he does have clear strength and weaknesses.
The problem I have is this, Monty, is from looking at 100 Thieves so far, right? Yes, it's only 2 games, isn't it? But the problem is the win is against Immortals, who looked absolutely abhorrently bad. So the problem is right now, I don't have that many like big facts. Like, spoiler, I thought Doublelift would be good. I thought he'd get himself back into form. I don't know about Bjergsen yet. He just looks a bit like average.
Dude,
hasn't had to do too much.
I have to talk about Bjergsen in his first game versus Cloud9. First off, you're up against Dplus, where the Scrimbucks weren't very good on Dplus. I will say Dplus has looked a lot better than I thought based on what I was hearing. And so that's a great sign for Cloud9. And Fudge looks more comfortable in the top lane than he did when right after he transitioned back into top lane from mid last split, which was to be expected. But Bjergsen, man, holy shit. I never want to watch this guy play Sylas again. It's not only the fact that to play Sylas well, you really have to play on the limit and around your kind of sustain in team fights and your repetitive crowd control. Like, you have to go in there and you really have to be aggressive. But it's also, I can't believe his build, man. Rod of Ages into Banshee's Veil Zonias. This is the biggest coward build I have seen of all time on Silent. I'm just like, it's very rare where I think you can justify both a Banshee's Veil and a Zonia's Hourglass at the same time. But by God, it's so depressing to watch this. And I guess we'll see what 100 Thieves can do. I do expect 100 Thieves to be a top 5 team in this league just because they will wait for other teams to throw, as you know, Bjergsen always
I was going
to
get to the problem I have with obviously the 2-game sample size I'm working on here is I thought on paper they should be like, you know, 4th. I had them 4th, I think, after obviously like FlyQuest, Cloud9, I think EG. I think those are my 3, except I think I had Cloud9, EG the other way around. Or maybe I actually had 100 Thieves, maybe one above Cloud9. I can't remember which way.
Or Liquid as well. I mean, yeah.
The problem is though, right now they've got a lot of work if they want to actually contend for the title. I really do think that. Like the way it started out.
Well, Thorin, they're going to be 3-1 at the end of this next week, and then we're going to have this conversation about how fans are massively overrating them because they played Dignitas and TSM.
Oh, you know the worst part is as well. People are going to make that TSM like some huge thing because of Doublelift and Bjergsen. It's like that TSM. That's only the joke is look at the players. That's not even TSM, is it? Like TSM isn't TSM anymore, boys. It's just a team.
Well,
now.
people are also going to overrate that game if they win because they think TSM is a good team when they beat Immortals in a game that Immortals kind of threw, and then also Team Liquid threw.
I will say, though, I did think, because I saw someone on Reddit made this joke, and it was a banger, so I'll give them credit. When they beat Team Liquid, there was that fucking joke someone made where they said that, like, Maple just sees, like, all the Korean flags in the server, and he activates, like, as though he's, like, the Winter Soldier or something, you know? Because, you know, famously, he's just, like, twice as good against Koreans when he's on flash rolls, when he, like, it was just inexplicable.
And Boogie, too.
Yeah, true. It wasn't. They were on a different version, but they were both on flash rolls, you're right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of true as well. Because this was like a classic
Korean teams.
This was like a classic Maple performance, yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, obviously the other meme everyone knows is Pyosik, brother, I did tell you, you are sort of a fraudulent world champion coming over this way. Because again, remember, the logic should be, Monty, this should be the LCS version of Bo. He should just waltz in, world champion, dumps for everyone. He did that tweet. No, it wasn't a tweet, it was an interview where it was like, if I lose this game, I will retire. And I even said before the game over, like, well, it's a shame his career only lasts like 2 games. But like, what?
What's so insane about that quote from Pyosik is, my guy, you spent the entire year getting dumpstered by Vicla and Prince last year. You spent the whole year getting dumpstered. Now, did you win in the gauntlet for the last place at World when it mattered? By God, you did. Congratulations. But surely, the point is, surely you should know how good these guys are. You should know.
Yes.
So why would you even say that?
Here's the thing for me. That just shows that, because here's the thing. The good thing about Pyosik is he is a character. He will trash talk and he will be funny and do things. But he, essentially, like, yeah, like his trash talk game, it's like, mate, you aren't the player that fits, though. You know what? I've always said this about Doublelift. Like, it worked with Doublelift because he was an amazing player. Like, if that had been tactical saying the same shit, it ain't cool. It just doesn't work. So the problem I have as well, I have to say about that move as well for me with Pyosik, is the other thing he said in the same interview, the way he said that if he lost to Team Liquid, TSM, he would retire, or was it FlyQuest, whichever one it was, right? FlyQuest, sorry. When he said that, what was hilarious was he also had a line where he said something like he couldn't like stoop down to that level. And it's like, bro, you're the reigning world champion of League of Legends and you've just joined LCS. You've already stepped down. That's why my joke on Twitter was, your only goal now is to be the prettiest Denny's waitress. You used to be like in Vogue magazine by that analogy and on the catwalk. Now you're in Denny's, innit? So. Because obviously TL, let's talk about them. TL's in fucking trouble, mate. It's like, I told you I wasn't high on this roster because I remember saying the same thing to you, Monty. Spoiler, Doublelift and Bjergsen did set the precedent for this. But if you are going to pick 2 positions to win in LCS, it is mid and ADC, and that's where your weakest players are. Not totally weakest. Like I hear all these great Scrimbook fucking stories. They've got promise. Like they should be good. I haven't seen it yet though, mate. This team looks really bad.
I've been really underwhelmed by Harry in particular. Not to say that you have huge expectations out of a rookie, but he has done very little He's frequently in the wrong place on the map. They don't seem to have their lane assignments together as a team. So he just has, he'll wander off into bot lane when his team needs him at an objective. He has had some of the lowest damage per minute in the league. He really hasn't done very much. And I struggle to see how this roster is going to be competitive for a title with a mid laner this week. It is very, very hard to be a good team. And I think even to make worlds if he doesn't improve massively.
And I'll chuck this in there. I'll do that classic line where they go, and I'll say that to say this, whatever the comedians always say, right? Here's the line, Monty. The other reason why they're in big, big trouble, aside from the fact that Pureshik was never this super hard carry dominant jungler you all think he never was, you idiots. Like, as Monty said, he even had one of the most scoffed years of his career. The very year he won the World Championship last year. It's just, it ended great, didn't it? And even in World Spoiler, just look at how they drafted. It's like they even knew he was a liability and started just doing weird shit. Here's my problem. We haven't even said the bloody name Summit yet. Tell you what, Summit, listen, I don't like to be rude, but you aren't welcome. Like, if you're going to play like this, fuck off. Go back to, go to the LPL, go to the LCK. Like, the way you played is atrocious. Remember, we're all talking about, like, Jax is cracked as fuck. Mate, Impact just handled you. That wasn't even the problem we were talking about. There wasn't any concern. And then that Nah game, listen, we all make fun of Armut for being back. You can fuck right off, mate. Fuck right off. Because he should be smurfing on these.
All right. So, to be fair, GP is a very good matchup into Jax, and Impact pulling that out was, I think, just good drafting from FlyQuest. But yes, I think the problem with Summit is that he had an incredible high on Cloud9, but he left as an MVP, basically sabotaging Cloud9 in the playoffs. Like, I don't know, he was so mental boomed that he basically threw Cloud9's spring playoff chances away, and he played abysmally. And honestly, if just purely from a management perspective.
The joke is the way the playoffs went, Monty, was like that scene at the beginning of The Dark Knight Rises, and Summit was just like he was actually, he attached the plane, he took all things out, and he was going to crash the plane, and then he was like, he turned to Berserker, he was like, they'll need one of us in the fire, brother, and just left him behind, and then just fucking, he exited the whole region, didn't he? Like, straight. The joke is he was gone before playoffs even ended, I heard, or something mad like that, It was egregious.
I guess that Summit signed up for something different than he got because of the whole LS fiasco within Cloud9 and the players swapping roles and everything like that. And he didn't get it, which is tilting. But at the same time, if I'm just the Team Liquid management and I'm thinking to myself, well, I am going to be playing two rookies at carry positions. Is there a possibility that this scenario might trigger a level of tilt in Summit? Because again, he's walking into an unknown situation and we know how he behaves when he doesn't like what's going on.
It's the joke. Don't worry, Monty. I know I promised, but I will do this video. This is another example because here's what's egregious, Monty. This is what I refuse to accept. Remember, we are talking about FlyQuest, right? Not Team Liquid. Team Liquid has an enormous amount of money, even in this limited year. So this is another example of where if you're Team Liquid, why don't you get Impact back to run this fucking team? Do you hear what I just said about FlyQuest, why they did it and got Impact? The joke is, you've done it again. Summit is the new Hoonie, and you've chosen Neo Hoonie over fucking Impact. Like, it's never going to be the right choice in LCS, is it? Have we learned nothing? Have we learned nothing? Also, Impact is immortal. He'll never die. Somehow he has, like, I don't know what he's done, but he has extended his, like, his raw consistency. It will just never end. It's like, it's insane, and it's too insane, mate.
And if we have to be honest, the GMing and management around Team Liquid has just been spectacularly bad.
It has.
Ever since they stopped their run of titles.
I'll tell you the move that killed it. It was when they traded Xmithy for Broxer, and it's just been downhill ever since.
Yeah, that's true.
Because remember, these were like during this time, COD would still be like winning MVP and stuff, and they could never win a title. And now look what they've ended up with now. Like, the joke is they went from they had like a dynasty. Like, guys, they not only did they win the top 4 titles, they could have kept winning after double if they'd done it right. They had some amazing pieces. They never won, and now they've sort of downgraded. And then where are they now? Dude, they're a mid-table team. Like, this team looks in trouble.
Yeah, and they have no identity, and it doesn't look like they're going to get an identity anytime soon.
Yep.
Because the veteran players are not providing that identity, and the rookie players are not at a point in their careers where they're able to do the carry performances.
Feels like a bit much, Monty, to ask Core JJ to somehow 1v9 on Nami. Like, not really a 1v9 champ, is it? It's not Pipe or something, is it, boys? Like,
well, also, they did take Marin as their head coach, a guy who has literally never coached before. And just hasn't even been involved in the professional scene. You know, he hasn't even been involved in the professional scene.
Yeah, but here's the problem. You know what I think? I think at this point in time, I know what's going on, Monty. It's sad because I always said, you know this, way back in the day when it was cursed, I always said I was actually always impressed by Steve Arhanset. The fact that, like, as a GM and an owner, he would always go for big names. Because I always thought, like, if you do that, and by the way, I was right in the end, if you do that, eventually, it's like in, you know this, it's like in the NBA or the NFL or the English Premier League. If you just have way more money than everyone and you stack the best players that you see with your eye test from other teams, eventually you can't be bad. You almost have to be at least a contender because you also have the luxury no one else has. You don't even have to commit to that play. You can fire him and get another superstar next year. So eventually you're going to gamble and get the right players. The problem I have is this. Well, the ones that he's missed on, if you look, is where it wasn't that the player was actually playing like amazing. He just bought the hype of like almost the Reddit narrative. So if you think about it, the Broxer one's egregious as fuck. Everyone in Europe, you can go back when I used to do the Elitist United show, we'd broken Broxer down with every analyst a million times over. Everyone agreed he wasn't a top jungler. And you sign him for what was a super team in Team Liquid instead of Xmithy. That's egregious. Then you look at some of the other ones over the years. It's like by the end, you're just signing people off like years ago when they were good. Like, why are you signing Summit? Cloud9 just got rid of that nightmare. You're bringing him back. Marin, guys, he won Worlds as a player in Season 5. That was, how many years? 8 years ago, 7 to 8 years ago. Like, what have you done for me lately, bro? Like, you know what I mean? How have we ended up with this team?
The thing is that he's never coached before, which is what we said coming into, this was our criticism of him, was like, we don't know how good he is going to be as a coach, right? We don't know how good he's going to be. And we also, I know he's been streaming and shit, but he hasn't been a part of a professional team since 2018. That was 5 years ago. Okay.
And also, shout out for replacing Jensen with Bjergsen. So that worked out, didn't it?
That was maybe the worst mistake.
That was glorious, one I know.
and by the way, there also isn't an excuse because Team Liquid has had the highest budget. And this information is very easy to get, guys, because here's what LCS does. They literally send a document to all of the teams that includes all of the salaries of the teams. So every team knows what every other team is spending. So this information gets out super easily. Like, obviously Travis does it a lot.
That's something rude. I don't know why would I even ask that question on somebody inside our story? I know it's
inevitable that you
redundant
will, so,
question. I know. What if you said no? Would I just be like, well, the whole dynamic's ruined now, Monty? Well, here's the thing that I'm going to say that's rude is what you were just talking about there. Oh fuck! What did you just say a second ago?
The salaries. The salary document.
I will say, Travis, I'm going to call you out on this one, homie. The first time you did it, I think it was at the end of season 8 or during season 9 or something, when he did that feature where he takes it, Monty, and he would do like, he wouldn't tell you the salaries, but he'd tell you per win. So you could sort of, if you understood like maths and process, you could sort of figure out like, oh yeah, Cloud9 and TL must be doing a good, and TL must have spent the money, and 100. You could sort of figure it out, right? But I'll just say this. I think the reason he did that and kept doing it is because he just didn't want to leak the info and get teams get upset with him. You're a journalist and your whole career is the LCS. If you have that info, either shut the fuck up or give us it. Why can't we know? Like, for example, why is it Monty that has to drop that like $7 million worth? Why is he doing? He's not even a bloody journalist. No, you know what I mean though. Like
rounding up to 7.
If you're Travis, that is your beat, mate. Like you don't, because my problem is this, and people know specifically Team Liquid was one of the ones back in the day with that whole thing where he went to fucking Hawaii or whatever. It was in like a hot tub with them all. That is insane, by the way, as a journalist who's independently covering that fucking region. That would be considered so beyond the pale in a real sport, like an NFL journalist just being there in a hot tub with all the players, and then he magically doesn't reveal secret stuff. Because that's what I get the vibe of. Or there was someone else I'd go, maybe there's some reason. This just sounds like you're scared you'll ruin your like inter-team relationships. You won't get your interviews or something. Because if you have that info, you're not obliged to. But I think it'd be cool to put it out there. And I've always said this. Travis chooses to limit himself. He could be one of the best journalists in the LCS. There's not many people even left nowadays. Remember, Riot's almost killed the fucking journalism scene there. Like, and there's no websites anymore. So Travis could be much better than he is. So I'm just a little bit upset in that sense. I wish he'd just fucking come out with some info and drop a bomb every now and then. Just drop a bomb every now and then, you know.
Yeah, and I think he doesn't want to, he obviously doesn't want to do that because his entire lifeblood is his relationship with Riot and his relationship with the teams, because nobody wants to watch content that consists only of Travis Coward.
That's why, unironically, by the way, I never flamed him for this. I always thought it was clever that he would find people who were smaller content creators. Dude, he's more savage than I am. I would just invite them on my show as a guest. He would just have them make the content and put it on his channel. It's like, look, to be fair, you weren't going to do that, so it's a great business move. You did it well. And he scouted some pretty good people. He got Overly and all those, but he's got some pretty good talents over the years. He had what was the name of the guy who does the stats? I can't remember his name. Yeah, the Magic or whatever his name was.
Yeah, who runs Oracle.
Yeah, you had that guy doing like a feature where it was like he broke down his stats. It was a good angle. Yeah, it's good content.
Yeah. It's not that his current content sucks, but Hotline League does suck. But
Hotline League, the thing I hate about that show, I'll tell you very quickly. It's not going to be a big rant. It's very quickly because I'll pass it to you and I'll see what you think. Obviously, you tried to be on the show once. The problem with that show is this: it is a disingenuous premise because it pretends to be a sports call-in show. Now, if you know anything, you'll know this, Monty. If you want to see a classic movie that's a mega underrated one, there's one called Talk Radio from like the 80s, which is a guy who's like a shock jock, and someone calls in and I won't spoil the plot. It's a very thrilling movie, though. It's like one like a character-driven performance. The point of Talk Radio is, one, first of all, the main host is nearly always a shock jock giving mad opinions. You've killed it there, Travis. And your co-host on the show is the guy whose whole shtick is, I don't do hot takes, I take hot takes apart. So already you haven't given a great groundswell. And then the whole point of your hot take is it encourages the fan to call in and go, yeah, and I also think Bjergsen's never going to make it. And you give the hot, and that's why the fans are loving it. Cause it's like that, famously like Monday morning quarterbacking in it. It's like, he should be fired, get him out the game. Like, that's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear like, there's a really big drama, but let's very carefully not talk about it. Like, bloody hell, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for that.
The hot takes and having a shock jock as a host serves a very important function, which is that, and it's what happens on this show, guys, when we've had guests on over the years. Basically, it allows the guests to be edgier and to do their real opinions, because what they say is inherently less controversial than what the host is saying. So the host is actually the hot takes that the host is giving are starting to tank all the aggro so that the guest can say their real opinions and not get shit on them.
It's basically how I've done hosting the whole time. Yeah, I'm basically the flak for the fucking heat-seeking missile so that Perks can say something 70% of spicy, but have a great quote and it not be blow the whole thing. By the way, here's the joke. First of all, the other thing that's egregious is how dare you call it hotline. The only hotline involved in the premise of that show, the joke should be that's why nothing ever gets talked about, because when they're about to talk about a controversial subject, Travis sees that like red LCS phone start bobbing, the real hotline. He picks it up like, take over, Mark. Yeah, yes, sir. I'll immediately shut it down. And here's the counter narrative. Thank you. Yes. Oh, sorry, Mark. I don't think that's the right topic to talk about, mate. MonteCristo. I don't think we can trust him on the call. Put on TSM fan number 17 to talk about why TSM might be good this season. Like, what is this? Because the premise of the show is great, by the way. I would love a show that was balls to the wall. It'd be fucking sick, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it could be quite fun, but tragically, it is what it is.
Now, I'm not going to say the LCS isn't that interesting, but if you notice, once we discussed a lot of the top teams, we did start just like, meta discussing like other content in the region stuff. So I'll just throw that out there. By the way, the one other team to talk about really is EG in it. So what do you think of what's EG's problem so far, Monty? Because I thought it'd be better than this.
I think what's disappointing is that in their game against CLG, they had such a crazy lead because, pound for pound, they're just a much stronger team than CLG. But at this point, Jojopian, I feel like he should know better about how to convert a lead when he's playing a champion like Ryze. And CLG, I think we can agree, the one thing you can't do with CLG is give them opportunities, because they actually have some pretty good macro play. Like if we're being honest, like this team is not a slouch. Their Dignitas game, now did they throw a little bit? Sure. Contracts had a very good game though. They did some really good set plays around Pum's Ash arrows that were impressive, like by any standard, not just by an LCS standard. And so this team is smart. And so if you repeatedly do the wrong thing, they will be able to get back into a game. Like they are capable of playing from behind. And so for Jojo to take the lead that he got and not execute any kind of split push, not play the map at all is embarrassing. Like Jojo needs to take the next step as a professional player and as a leader within this team and convert his leads. You can't lose to CLG with this advantage. That's inexcusable. CLG should be a gatekeeper team for the playoffs. They're a team that has strong fundamental teamwork, but they should not have the individual ability to contest with most of the other teams that we would consider top in LCS.
By the way, I had a slight other topic, and here's the other thing, Monty. I won't ask you the name because should I say something controversial? I'll just put it out there and we'll see what you do with it. The usual dynamic of your career and mine since you've been connected with me. So catch this hot potato / grenade, Monty. Right. So here's the one I'm going to throw out there. I don't know if you saw this, but on the Evil Geniuses channel, they put out a video 5 days ago. It was called, like, this is where it's going to be a serious topic now. You're going to think it's all fun and games, guys. This is a serious topic. The title of the video is The Dark Truth Behind the Evil Geniuses Off-Season. I remember seeing that and thinking, is this like a community made thing? It's on the Evil Geniuses channel. It's just a funny hype trailer for this season, right? And what they make fun of in it with like documentary things is the idea that, like, obviously they don't address anything about the Danny angle. They just make it seem like it's a joke because remember they called Evil Genius. It's just the branding. What it was, but here's my problem with that, Monty. Other people might not know this because they don't know the behind the scenes stuff we've heard. But spoiler, I'm committing myself now. Just like I haven't done it yet in CSGO, but don't worry, I'm going to get it done. You know, I'm going to nail them in CSGO, and I did a different video about that. I've got a Frankie video coming. All these people I'm going to nail to the wall. I'm going to do one about that League of Legends story and what happened with Danny. I'm going to find out. I already have quite a lot of it, but I'm going to get the rest of it, and I'm going to figure out, because here's the thing, Monty. What I will never accept is this. You know that thing, one of the things that always outrages me the most is when, you know, in the newspaper, there's the story where it's not just that a guy did a murder, but you know when they like the evidence is circumstantial and they get off. You know that famous trope where they like taunt the victim's family, where it's almost like, you know, I did it, but I got away with it. That's almost what this feels like. This is disgusting. I know your brand is Evil Geniuses. Spoiler, that's terrible branding right now, if you know the things I know. If you actually know, so even what's implied about what happened with Danny, the idea your org is doing that angle of like the dark truth, and then you don't even really address it. And as an org, you will never actually address that. As far as I can tell, all you will do is you will attack anyone who does address it like they're the evil. You'll do what you call Darvo. You'll flip it so you're the victim and they're the aggressor. Even though actually it's people, by the way, who care about young men and people in the careers not being fucked over, trying to say questions must be asked of this. You have to look into this. What's going on? You've tried to block all that, and then now you're sort of memeing in that vein. I find that quite distasteful, I've got to say.
Yeah, there was definitely some shady shit that was going on with that whole Danny situation.
Like, I'll drop on here. I've heard from someone. This is why I have to search it through, though. I'm not a journalist in that regard. I'm not an investigative journalist. But I did hear from someone legit. They think that those like DMs that were on stream from the family, they said it wouldn't surprise them if those were real.
I don't see why they would be fake.
Yeah,
you know,
but even though,
I don't see why they would be fake.
When you look at how that woman, Nicole Lapointe, tried to address it in her video, the implication, she never overtly said it, but the implication was that like it was nonsense or it wasn't right or whatever. And the maddest part about that, I'll just throw this in there as well, this will probably be in the video because it's fire, is how fucking dare you as an org potentially burn a player out, mistreat them, use them as trade bait, and then after that, call yourself their family, and then when their family says something about it that you disagree with, you counter them. Who the fuck are you? I'll tell you who you aren't. Their family. That's so egregious, mate. Like, I don't think, here's the thing. They shouldn't go to prison over it, but it's just so distasteful to me. Like, what's the upside of that? You know, here's the thing. Either cop to it, which would be great, or just let it lie. Just don't mention it. Don't even go into that area. Just let it go and go, we're just going to put it behind us, you know.
Yeah, and also, guys, just in terms of the broader industry right now, so you're aware about EG's reputation, there are a lot of people that have told me that EG is an absolute shit show internally, like very badly run. The management, you know, is basically
I'll learn a line for you. I'll give you a quick line. This was a line that when I almost recorded the CSGO one I had. Are you ready? Because it'll be CSGO, so no one will see this. This was the joke that you'll appreciate, Monty. At the beginning of the video, I was going to go. I investigated the org. I got people who were past players and staff. I got people who were present players and staff. I asked them throughout the whole organization. Some of them liked some of the other players. Some of them liked some of the coaches. Some of them didn't like some of the players. Some of them didn't like some of the coaches. Some of them didn't like Nicole Lapointe. Well, that's it. I mean, everyone didn't like her. Like, that's the joke. Like, some of the staff, there's like 2 or 3 staff there, mate, who like any game, everyone tells you the same thing. Sometimes without even you volunteering. They're just it's also, I hate these people, you know.
it's also so many people who have been part of that organization and who have left. They hold a bitter hatred.
Yep. Like, they're not fans. They're not fans.
Surprisingly antagonistic, I would say.
Like, put it this way, I'll give you the contrast that tells me this is serious, Monty. You know this. It was almost impossible, even sometimes privately, with some of the people who like had Stockholm syndrome, who were in TSM. Some of them even privately would defend TSM. And that was what was mad to me, because I would get, you were mistreated. Dude, none of that's going on with this EG thing. Like you say to a man, they all just say, like, either if they're polite, they're like, I didn't like it, I disagreed with the way it was done. If they're just fucking raw players, like, I fucking hate that person, this person, and they fucked me up. Yeah, mate, it's not a good thing behind the scenes, put that way.
Yeah, it doesn't seem great. Perhaps there will be another holy war soon against evil geniuses.
Well, the joke is that they've also played into that, haven't you? If you're going to call yourself evil, we're literally crusaders of fucking esports, homie. We are here to crush evil, to destroy evil, to root out and remove evil, okay? Remember what they said, even, Monty? Old Edmund Burke quote, isn't it? The only thing it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. Well, you know what? These good men, we are going to do something. There you go.
It's time to get my cross shield back out, I guess.
There you go. Thing is, I actually did like, even though you didn't come up with it, I did actually like that the angle they took in that, like, crusade. You can remember that video we did with all the art contest, was they always made me just like the fucking guy with the broadsword, just rocking. Because my style, like, I just go in and I just hope I win, you know. But they made you were almost like some sort of like cleric fucking priest character with like magic elements. No, but they put the angle as though you were like trying to do the more like cerebral approach. It was pretty good. It was good dynamic. I thought it was pretty good. And I love the way to this day, TSM fans can never take the L. You know, to this day, they say we didn't win. They go, what happened to that TSM crusade? Where the fuck's TSM the last 3 years, guys? They're actually a laughing stock. Like, the joke is, they got so bad, we started to feel sorry for them. That shouldn't even be possible. That's how bad the crusade was. The joke is, it was like war. War is hell, isn't it? Like, everyone loses, you know?
Also, we definitely won. Now, did we beat them? No, they beat themselves by leaking all their conflict of interest on Double Lift Stream. We didn't beat them, to be clear. They did fall on their own sword.
Here's the joke. Are you ready? Here's the joke, Monty. And you know me. My whole skill is it's the wording of the joke and how you set it up. So you ready? Yeah. And the worst thing about TSM is they're supposed to be at least experts about League of Legends, and yet they lost fucking potentially millions of dollars because some idiot was just hard stuck and could never perform. But enough about tactical. Oh, you probably thought I was talking about Sam Bankman-Fried. Way! Did you? There you go. Whatever. They're just done as an org. There's the other thing, mate. They've even been destroyed financially. We didn't even do that. Like, whatever.
Yeah, well, Riot helped by not giving them the Valorant partnership, which was actually one of the best things Riot has ever done.
That was spicy. Not least because I'll tell you what, Riot very rarely gets a true W. But I'll tell you what, Mark Merrill, hey, the fucking, the hidden dagger is the most deadly, right? You got that fucking love me some Regi line hits different now, doesn't it, boys? It hits different now, though, doesn't it? Like, when you don't get that spot, it's different. I'm just saying.
I did make that tweet. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I used the love me some Regi like copy pasta meme to talk about Mark Merrill, because the funniest thing that's happening now, right, is that Mark Merrill's entire criticism of Regi, which was, by the way, complete delusion.
I remember this tweet now. Yes, go on.
So the whole point of the love me some Regi quote from Mark Merrill was he made this Reddit post that was like, love me some Regi. But the gist of it is this, like, why isn't he taking some of the money he's making from League of Legends esports and reinvesting it there instead of using the millions of dollars he's made on LoL in other games? Which was obviously an absurd premise for the following reason. If it was possible to make more money from League of Legends esports by spending more money, it's a financially sound business decision to spend more money in League of Legends.
You don't need to tell him, do you?
Why do you need to tell him that? So Riot had this, and by the way, I can confirm that at this time there was a delusion among the Riot esports management, where they had crafted their own conspiracy theory. See, you guys think it was Mark Merrill being dumb. It wasn't Mark Merrill being dumb. He was the president of the company. It wasn't his job to like be in the weeds this much to know what was going on. What happened is the morons in charge of Riot Esports told Mark Merrill that this was happening, and so Mark just repeated that back on Reddit. So that thought was incepted into his mind, and he didn't go back and be like, why did you tell me that shit? You're fired. To the people who told me that, I would have fired them instantly if like, you guys just made me look stupid. Yep. And also, it's not that he made them look stupid. It's that incident started a domino effect.
So much. Yes.
It started a domino effect that led to franchising.
Like the joke is, if he didn't make that statement for real, Riot just gets to have such a way better position for years to go. They probably would have done franchising eventually, but it would have taken them more sound minds to get them in a room. You know, they could have had a few more years of just running the scene with everyone with, as you say, the opposite, terrible margins.
They had to give up a significant amount of control because of the uproar that happened as a result of that.
And here's the other angle, if you think about it, Monty. It's only because there was LCS franchising. You got LEC franchising. LEC has killed the LCS.
And LCK franchising, which was also terrible. So,
what a world.
So anyway, this is obviously Overwatch League, like, also pushed the franchising to happen faster. It wasn't a single contributor, but it did significantly weaken Riot's negotiating position. So anyway, the point of this is that they basically made an outrageous claim that teams were somehow like subsidizing their other divisions. So my tweet was basically like saying, love me some Mark Merrill, but why is he using the money from League of Legends to fund the development of other Riot games? Which shows how stupid his original position was, because of course Riot should be using the money from League of Legends to fund the development of new and better games. But a lot of fans have been complaining recently that like, oh, the resources aren't going back into LoL. Guys, LoL isn't going to be around forever, right? It's not, I wouldn't say it's in maintenance mode, but the majority of the money they're going to be making is going to be going into other projects and not back into League of Legends. They're not getting a bunch of new players anymore. The barrier to entry of 160 champions in this fucking game and no easy path for people to learn the game. The tutorial system is garbage. The new player experience is garbage. They're not going to fix it. They can't fix it, guys. They can't fix it. It's too complicated right now. So they have to figure out other things to do. Otherwise they'll die as a company, which I wouldn't hate, but I don't think it's in their best business interest.
And you'd think fucking Tryndamere would be better at spin. Whatever. That was fairly low. That was low hanging fruit. You know,
that's good. I like it.
Wasn't bad. If Mark Merrill is Tryndamere, people don't know.
Anyway, so that was the point I was making on Twitter. It was a deep cut. But those of you who understood it, I know really appreciated it.
Can we talk about LCK then? End on a high.
We do have to talk about the new LCS production.
Oh, okay.
I think that, because here's the thing.
By the way, you know what you said earlier? That thing about like, if you've had like such a terrible scenario, anything, mate, look, the QT Cinderella person did a perfectly fine job. Yeah. The way they were raving about it just shows how bad the fucking show's been. Like, that was just a normal job, guys. It wasn't something, it was promising. It was interesting, but like, people were raving about it like it was the greatest thing of the weekend.
Whippo was obviously great.
Yeah. He's always good in that sense. Yeah,
he's always super good. Very charismatic, very knowledgeable, super good at talking, very good at explaining things. I thought he was really fun to have. Oh,
I know what we need to discuss, because here's my problem, Monty. When you do TikToks and stuff, and I watch them in my brain, I think I had that conversation with you on a show, but we never did. Which is when they revealed it. This is the most egregious part of the whole setup. So you got rid of Dash. Literally was just voted best in the world at his role. You got rid of him because you were like, there's no more analyst desk. Now you tricked us all there, because we all thought, oh, they're doing a different format. There's an analyst couch. Oh, bring back Dash then. No, let's not have Dash. Right? Logically, he should still be there. Like, he'd be doing a great job. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't that weird, because the joke is they sort of hyped it like they were going to reinvent broadcasts. The joke is, I made this joke on Twitter. Monty did that in the fucking Worlds. And the joke is, because Monty had Papa Smithy, Wolf, the joke is Monty had more tier 1 League of Legends experts on his couch than the LCS had on their couch. They go, what? That's a bit petty.
Well, also, I had more LCK experts on my desk literally outside of the Chase Center. So right outside of the World Finals, I had more LCK experts than they had inside the stadium on the broadcast for an all LCK final. What a world, right? What a world. But also, the other thing about the LCS broadcast, Thorin, is that their pre-show was on the couch already with Dash last year. And what we were told that the reason why they got rid of Dash was because they were trying this revolutionary new thing where they didn't need a host. But they literally just replaced him with Jat. Jat was just doing his job, but kind of worse. And it, as far as I could tell, was exactly the same thing, just with no dash, and there wasn't a revolutionary new product.
You remember, Monty? There was this league. You might not remember it. It was a long time ago. It was called the Overwatch League. I know it's basically dead now, but it was a thing a few years back that they were mainly doing, in a smaller game. And in this thing called the Overwatch League, they had a guy called Monty, who was called one of the best casters in the world at the time. And then what happened was, look, I don't know. I mean, it's awkward that Monty's here on the show with me, but I'm going to keep talking about it in the third person. So what happened was Monty didn't really get the offer he should have gotten. And it wasn't really what, things had been the years before. And one of the reasons he took that gig, justifiably, is it was one of the craziest chances to change forever what being a part of a company and being talent was, both in terms of impact on the show and the broad, but also, I'll tell you right now, it was the best contract in the world, maybe the best contract ever for a league of, for esports talent, as far as I know, like a proper contract, this length, all these bonuses. And what happened is, because Overwatch League didn't live up to what it was supposed to be, understandably, they had to cut costs. But they didn't. This is what everyone knows the story. The problem is this: even though I know all companies are slimy as fuck and they'll always try and take every W, even when it's an L, on the PR, they didn't just say, sorry, it didn't work out, Monty. We're sad to see you go. Happy to, Instead, what they did is they just announced their new talent, which were obviously lesser talents, even though some of them were native to the game. And they span it as, we're just trying to go a different route and a different direction with our talent and what we do. The joke is, I had the same vibe when I saw that couch, mate. The second I saw that couch, my first thought wasn't, this is something revolutionary. It was like, sounds like they just don't want to pay Dash whatever he wanted to be the LCS coach. That's the first thing I thought. And the problem with that, guys, is this. This is like when you're getting a team and you have to downsize. If you had to downsize a team with Bjergsen and Doublelift, you fire the top laner, you fire this guy. You don't fire Doublelift. You know what I mean? He was the win condition. So I'll say that the same thing. Wasn't Dash the best thing? Dash and Emily were the best thing on the LCS. Yeah. And to me, Dash was iconic at this point. He's done so many years. He is an icon of that broadcast.
Well, it's also, and I said the same thing on Power Spike, but if the concept is we want to do more fun segments and we want to bring more guests in and we want to do skits, why wouldn't you use the guy who makes people comfortable, whose entire job is integrating people into the broadcast, who is literally an actor who has been to one of the best acting schools in the whole fucking world?
Dude, he used to pretend LCS was good every week. He's a fucking method actor. Obviously, he's like Robert De Niro in the 70s or
something. But I mean, that's the point, right? Is that this is the guy you want to keep during this transition because he smooths out all the wrinkles as you are grappling with changing the broadcast. He's the one who can cover up the best mistakes that are made in the production. He's the one who can make awkward situations significantly less awkward. He's really, really good.
I thought he was really good at controlling the tone, Monty, because as you say, he knew when to make it funny or when to roll with what, if you know production is an obvious fuck up, but you're making it seem like something fun has happened, which obviously inside, by the way, you're dying when that happens, but you have to pretend, this is hilarious, we're going to now go to a different segment. He would just pull that off, and the joke is you at home probably didn't even know there was a problem. That's when you know someone's nailed it on broadcast.
Yeah. I know. I agree with you. And so for me, it's like clearly a money issue. Because even though in the second version of Travis's interview with Nas and John Needham, by the way, because he redid it, so we will never know what was said in the original one, they said they weren't cutting budgets, but that doesn't mean that they're allocating budgets in the same way.
Yes.
People like Cutie Cinderella are very expensive. Guys, getting these influencers, we're talking about, they can be $10,000-$15,000 or more a day, which is probably that's about 5 to 8 times what a normal esports caster day rate is.
It's enormous.
And, it's really, really expensive. And maybe they'll bring value. Maybe they'll bring additional viewers. I did think that she did a good job and brought her own flair into those segments.
As a rookie, it was very good.
Yeah. I mean, it's no shade against her. But that budget has to, they're making moves in terms of that budget, and they've decided that budget is going elsewhere.
Basically, Monty, and this is going to be another, because if you notice, one of my skills is actually, sadly you know this, but no fan will ever know this. Do you know 99% of making a good joke on broadcast is just saying the words without tripping over them? And that's why other people can't do it. It's hard, because you have to phrase it right. And if you fuck up the wording on a joke, it ruins the whole joke. So here's the joke, Monty. Do you know what LCS did to Dash, Riot did to Dash as the LCS host in the off-season, was how every game goes against a newbie at Smash. They wave Dash goodbye. I don't even like Smash. I'm just that good. I'm just that fucking good at what I do. So give me 10K to be on the fucking LCS. I'll be QT Thorin. Listen, I could go on broadcast and say Doublelift's overrated too. I can do that as well and pretend to like him. I've been pretending for years now. I let you do like that. Sad thing is, I actually low key. You know, I keep it real, Monty. I don't even dislike Doublelift. I just think he's being a bit of an idiot. You know, I still like him for the same reason I ever did.
He's the greatest North American-born player of all time. That's not really a controversial statement. That's pretty ironclad statement. He is a good player, but yes, he is. I mean, he's just an airhead.
Yes.
He's just a ditz, which is why it's funny. But yeah, I think like what I saw from the broadcast was honestly pretty good. I thought the guest segments ended up going well. I thought the intro that they did, the hype intro, was much better than it had been in the past. Did you see the intro with the elevator and the skyscraper, Thorin? What did you think?
Yeah.
I thought it was really good.
It was better than that one where they had like that fist fight or the fuck that. Because here's what people don't remember, because we have to connect the past to this. That fist fight one deserves to be considered the modern day running down the halls at the beginning of the LCS, where they just wasted time doing that stupid intro. Like, that one was whack. This was actually pretty decent, I thought. Yeah.
I mean, the fist fight was well made. It just had nothing to do
with it. Was. Yeah, you're right. It just was irrelevant to League of Legends in any context. It wasn't even, by the way, actually fitting for the personalities of the players and the talent of that. Like, it didn't even make any sense. It was just nonsense. It was essentially just like, what if Dash and like Kobe had a Matrix fight? Like, all right, like, why are we spending money on here? This sounds, by the way, I'll say it right now, LCS sounds like those like stories you hear about Hollywood in the 80s when everyone's on coke, and that's why they're all making mad movies. Like, yeah, like Sylvester Stallone and his grandma, let me think, they're bank robbers, and they're like the joke is LCS one's like, what are we gonna do? Oh, tell you what, who's a good QT Cinderella? So that's 10 grand a day. Give her 12. Right, bring her in. Dash, nah, tell you what, I've seen enough of him. It wasn't that good. That the LCS numbers were down last year. Fire him. And then, it just sounds like that. They're just reaching for mad things all over the place. What the fuck's going on? Oh, John Wick's big at the moment, sir. That's what we're going to do. John Wick intro.
It also just didn't make sense because there wasn't even like fake beef between Kobe and Dash.
The joke is that I'll tell you how that should have been. Logically, that should have been something like Freak and Kobe or something, and it was like the idea they're always battling opinions.
Freak and Dom, dude.
That would be great. Fire. By the way, if you had the balls to do that,
sorry, let's go.
If you had the balls to do Dom versus Freak on that, and it was the same fight, even that would be legendary. That would be. By the way, I'd even give bad props to Riot if they had the balls to do that, mate. That would be sick.
Yeah.
Here's the joke. Are you ready? The joke. Remember, Monty, this is fucking sick. This is my best wordplay in a while. Because they're having a fight, and because Dom was a jungler, and because of Freak, you could call it the Rumble in the Jungle.
Yeah.
Not bad.
That's so true.
Not a bad reference. I hit everyone. I hit Freak. I hit Dom. I hit the fucking actual fight. There you go. Not bad.
Well played.
Not bad. There you go.
Yeah, I think there have been missed opportunities, and it was a well-produced. It was really good from a technical perspective. It just had nothing to do with esports.
Yes. Should we talk about LCK?
I will say, Dash got an excellent piece of footage for his acting career now that Riot has forced him to go do that instead. So it was very timely for Dash that happened, because I think they got some Marvel stunt coordinators, and now he can be like, look at what I can do in his auditions for.
Oh, I know what I'm going to have to do now. I'm going to have to say one last thing before we go to LCK, and I'm going to have to make it bloody controversial, aren't I? Oh, well, I guess someone had to do it, Monty. May as well be me again, right? So here's what I'm going to say. It's not actually that controversial, but I will just say this. If you are actually Dash, you're probably liking the show so far. You're probably, okay, it sort of stood up for me, said I was the best. Here's the one part I've got to tell you, though, Dash. You have sort of believed your own hype a bit, and here's why. Because I saw all those posts he was doing that was all like, hey, don't worry that, guys, I'll be streaming soon, and you'll still be able to watch me. Here's where esports fans fucking suck, right? I'll give you a quick aside. Have you ever seen those scenarios that would happen every few years where there would be some tiny streamer, often it would be someone who was disabled or some sort of a minority or something, and there would be someone, and people would decide as sort of like a cool gesture, like, let's blow this person up, let's all jump in, let's sub, let's gift subs, let's be in, and then let's all tell them when they got 10K content, say, we love you, like, you can do it, like, congrats. I always thought the evil part about that was the way that, like, attention culture works, because you know the way the economy economy works. That happens for a week, and then the next week you're back to almost nothing, and it's like you've been shown what it's like to live the rarefied life, and it's taken away from you. You're back in the gutter. Here's the problem Dash has. Don't worry, mate. When they're watching the LCS Twitch and they're tormenting, when they're on Reddit, they're all going to say, oh, I love Dash. Oh, I wish I could watch him. They're not going to tune into your stream, I'll tell you right now. That's just the nature of the industry. I'm sorry.
So, I actually have been watching Dash's co-stream. He's on. He has a couch set up, and he has been doing it with Artemis, the former EG coach.
Yeah, I know him.
And so they've been bouncing off of each other pretty well, and I found it enjoyable. And it's a very different product because, in the same way that my Worlds live viewing was more of a conversation and more of like kind of a fun, dynamic atmosphere. It's not that I don't like other co-streamers, but I do find the vibe better when there's people in the same room together. And Artemis is very insightful, and Dash, I think, asks good questions. So I was actually hosting I was rating with my Bangers Only stream, his stream coming into the LCS.
Oh, then how many views did it have? Because you must know.
I think he had about 500 to 700 concurrents.
Bro, this is the beginning. This is when they should all feel sorry to be on the stream. It's at 500 now. Where's it going to be in like 8 weeks? That's the question,
I'm just saying, I was watching it.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying the fans are, unfortunately, that's not the way fans are. They'll say they're loyal like that, but the joke of fans, this is actually the reason why we've had to do company like Fast Free Nation. The real problem with fans is they want it, so they need to be spoon-fed. So the joke is, if you aren't on the LCS broadcast, you don't exist to it. The joke is, I bet a bunch of them don't even know there is a core stream. They're like, what? Dash core streams? Like, they're not watching in that sense,
I think the hard thing is that everybody who wants to watch a co-stream has already made a decision about who they're going to watch on the co-stream. It's, they've already decided that I want to watch Meteos or Sneaky or LS or Dom or whoever else. And so I think it's really hard to break in to that co-streaming environment. I think it's tough.
Right, here's the thing. Let's do like a quick 5-minute break, then do the LCK. Right, we're back. We've saved the best to last. Although, as I pointed out, if you watch the LCS segment, logically, you must never listen to this part of the show because you have no clue who Vicla and Prince are. All the stories we talked about last year. Like, the joke is, you probably watched at Worlds and like, where's Arya and DFM? Like, shut up, you idiot. Like, you have a chance. You choose not to learn. I've always said, because the old line, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. My joke is, you can lead a fan to a point, but you can't make him think. That was my old line back in the day. So
and it even rhymes.
So
unlike the original.
Yeah, exactly. Monty actually nailed it, which is, obviously, if you know the top 2 teams in Korea, like on paper, obviously it should be Dplus, and then T1 just kept the same roster that's pretty good. And obviously the marquee matchup, much as last season it was T1 and Gen G, and then the past seasons it was Dam1 and T1. The marquee matchup already happened. It was Dplus against T1. And bearing in mind, some of us thought, I thought Dplus might end up being the best team in the world. As if you needed the script, the classic script of the LCK, you have to have the underdogs lose to T1. Because here's another thing, mate. It can't just be Faker at this point in time. There's something about the T1 name. It's like people just lose these bloody regular season marquee games against them. The amount they've won is ridiculous in history. Even when they're not the best, they always win them. Because this was a big game. This was a big time game.
It was, huge game, really delivered, was insanely high level. It will probably easily be the best regular season game anywhere in the world. Was it your
banger of all the ones you've done so far? There's another thing. Monty's doing a stream, by the way, on his stream, the Bangers Only thing, where I'll just quickly do this at the top of the segment. As well as doing this show where we do the analysis, what Monty's doing is, because we complained over the years, and I know, by the way, I genuinely think people like Emily Rand, Kelsey Moser, they almost deserve like a fucking statue in front of like the LCS or something, because these people have I think cut 10 years off their life trying to watch every game in the world. Well, the point is, they did all that stuff to know what's going on, but fans can't do that. It's too much time. The joke in the modern days, you can't even just watch all of LPL. That alone's too much. So what Monty's doing is he's going to watch all the best VODs in every region, every one of the big ones, and he's just going to basically show you which the good ones are. It's called Bangers Only, and so this was the banger of all bangers thus far.
Unfortunately, we will not be having another banger of this caliber for quite some time, most likely, at least on paper, right? Maybe we'll get a better series, but this series was really high level in the way that it was played, and it had everything you wanted, right? It had crazy good storylines leading into it, with Kyria doing all the weird stuff in the meta that he's doing with AD carries as supports, and then the mind games of each team, T1 then taking away the Nami and Lucian that had been so dominant with Deft and Kellen in that bot lane, where they've just been absolutely smashing people in LCK, and so that was taken away. And then we got to see that the response to this was a bunch of AD carry bans. It was like 5-6 AD carry bans a game to prevent KIA from doing that, who then pulls out the support Kalista as a response, which we hadn't seen before. And we have Kellen playing Guardian bone plating shield bash Yuumi to try and counteract the dominance of the Lucian Nami lane into the Zeri Yuumi, which was
this is some dark tech, boys. This is some dark tech.
The dark tech was out of control in this. The bot lane dark tech was out of control in this series because it was all the dark tech that caused the new dark tech.
It was a game within a game, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah,
it was actually wild. So it was a really phenomenal series, and if you guys want to go check it out, it is a Twitch VOD on my channel where I go over it. But watch the games regardless wherever you watch it. It was amazing. And your point about Dplus, what's so good about Dplus's performance was that this could have been a 2-0 for Dplus and likely should have been a 2-0 for Dplus.
They also did the classic storyline against T1 in best of 3 marquee matchups. The classic win the first game, second game. We all know the way it goes. They somehow win the third game. Curse monkey paw to win every third game of the marquee matchup.
You can't give T1 too many chances to adapt to you, right? It's like the Borg in Star Trek. You can kill a few Borg, but then they adapt to you and they assimilate you, and you become, your strategies become part of their collective hive intelligence. So you have to deal with them quickly. And the factors in this match that Dplus was nearly able to win, even though they're still trying to get used to having Kana and Deft on this roster, was, I think, a very good omen for the rest of the rivalry, because it hopefully will continue to be close. But if Dplus is capable of going up against a T1 roster that made no changes, that kept their synergy intact, that still has the styles that they had from last year, it's a great sign. It's a great sign. So yeah, it was a really compelling series where it felt like we got absolutely everything we could out of it. It was, an incredible back and forth game in game 1. Canyon had just an insane smite play. For those of you guys who saw it, it wasn't even really that T1 made a mistake at this Baron. They tried to zone him out, but Canyon just fucking outplayed them, and he gets into the pit on basically he ults Zeus, who's playing Yone he's playing Sejuani. He ults him before Zeus can ult him to keep him out of the pit as they finish the Baron. The Baron's at 1300 HP, and you see the Zeri laser animation starting, and he times it so that the tick of damage at the end of the animation is exactly the same time as his smite when the Baron's at 1300 HP, which means that it's actually Deft on Zeri that secures the Baron. But fucking amazing. Actually amazing play. Really fucking good. So Canyon he did make a mistake in the third game by over pursuing in the bot side, which allowed Faker to get a triple kill, flashing for the Draven kill did kind of lose the game. But if you want to see
there was a moment in this game where Faker, this is the thing, guys. If you only look at World, you're going to think he's still, I always say this, but he does still have flashes because he is a truly great player. The thing about the great players is, even when they're not as good, it's like in sports, they'll still have a throwback game. He had moments in this where it was like, fuck, it's Faker again. He had some moments where he looked sick.
I mean, he's been really on form at the start of this season. Faker looks really good right now.
But not bot lane, mates. They were playing pretty well this one. They were playing fucking pretty. KIA is just, I'm saying it again. People used to say this when T1 used to be the best. I think he is arguably the best player in the world again, mate. He's just bonkers. His champion pool is unfair.
It's unfair, and he's setting the pace of the meta, and he has realized certain things that it's going to percolate into other regions. We should see it in other places. It's already started to percolate into other teams, like Beryl playing the support Caitlyn this past week as well. But it's just, Umbral Glaive is just too fucking good right now. And the game is so focused on bot lane priority and poke, early game poke to get people off of Drakes to start, stacking Drakes. Umbral Glaive provides an insane amount of additional vision control. That item is super broken, in my opinion, right now. And yeah, I mean, if you think about all of the things that these AD carries, they have a lot of utility. Caitlyn traps are one of the best abilities in the game at the professional
level. One of the
level.
best things to set up a gank ever in the brush, isn't it? Like, it's perfect.
Yep. And also it allows you to control objectives so well because you can't get rid of them.
Baron control, perfect.
Yeah, you cannot get rid of them. You can set up poke damage by just front loading your ultimate. You have the lethality early. It takes time to build armor. So until we're getting into the 18-20 minute range, like lethality is very effective within the game right now. Yeah, Caitlyn traps are amazing. Even Kalista, like think about what Kalista does, offers sentinels and free vision control. Kalista offers another smite on your support.
Also, how about this, mate? Your support has the Kalista ult. That's OP as fucking the kit. If you could make it work, that's OP. Yeah, what?
Because you save your AD carry.
Right? It's mental, isn't it? That's so OP. It's ridiculous.
Like, tell me which is better, guys. Kalista saves a support or Kalista saves an AD carry, right?
Exactly.
Also allows you to clean up team fights very well, which we saw by chucking the Draven in to these fights, and basically at the end of a fight getting a massive knock up straight into a Draven ult turned out to be pretty fucking good. Yeah, you know, if you
that moment in that game, I just remembered as well. The one where every time Faker on game 3 was just like dee, dee, like all the fucking Zhonya's going off around. Yeah. Do you remember? Like everyone just had a Zhonya's clear. I love that. That was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean it's really, really good. I love to see what KIA is doing. Obviously, the Ashe provides long range, infinite range, conditional engage, allows you to make plays. We saw in that Kwangdong Freaks game, that was one of the cleanest first 15 minutes I have ever seen in a game. And by the way, you guys can go to my YouTube channel, which I am resurrecting from the dead. And it's from my Bangers Only stream. You can see I did an analysis of the first 15 minutes of the game where I do a lot of telestration and talk about why T1's early game is so clean and why the draft is so good. If you guys are curious, please go subscribe to that channel as well. We'll be doing more of that content, hopefully. But yeah, everything about what KIA is doing is really shifting the meta. And the thing is, are players going to be good enough to mirror this within other regions in LPL? Probably the answer is yes. I'm curious to see how it goes in some of the other regions as well. But yeah, it's been really fun to watch T1, and it's been really fun to watch Dplus. And it's been pretty fun to watch NG and KT.
Before we go to the other teams, the last thing I want to say about T1 is this. Bearing in mind, I didn't think T1 were going to win Worlds until they got to the final, basically. Like, at that point in time, yes, then, of course, I thought they would beat the RX because the RX should have sort of eventually done the Cinderella and just failed at the last step and died and lost in game 5. But actually, the joke is, because Faker isn't at his absolute best now, I didn't feel that sorry for Faker not winning another Worlds title. Like, he's already won plenty of fucking Worlds titles. He's had plenty of cracks as well. He's had some amazing... By the way, T1 has also just stacked talent around him for like 4 or 5 years now. This ain't season 8 when they did him Dirty Boys. Like, now he has all the talent. Like, if he was the best, he would have a few more Worlds rings. That's just a fact, in my opinion. The problem I have is this. It was KIA that shook me, mate. Like, I can't lie. That was even worse than those Jensen ones where he was all shaking. That was actually heartbreaking when he was just fucking broken at the end of game 5, mate. Because I do think that guy deserves a fucking World Championship, mate. That guy was one of the best in the world from support position.
Yeah,
that guy deserved that.
I think spring of last year, he was the best player in the world in spring. And I think right now he might be the best player in the world again. As you said, there's an argument to be made that he is currently the best player in the world.
By the way, I'll tell you something fucked up. You actually really, really need moments like that where you see them on camera. Same like Faker when he lost that Season 7 Worlds. Because what you need to know is that this isn't just video games. This is their life and their career, and they have put in mad hours. And so I always say this. I know it sounds fucked up, but it's almost like proof that there has to be like... pain before pleasure means anything, because in the same way as we love like the joy of seeing, like, you know, when in CSGO when like KD wins or something, like, oh wow, he won a tournament, like the joy of that has to be mirrored by the fact that when you lose, it's devastating. You don't just go, well, it's your turn, good luck. No, like, you know, by the way, maybe you never make it to the World's Finals. That might be your one crack. It's like the Super Bowl. Maybe you just never go back, you know, like that. It has to be, unfortunately, really harsh, because that's what's balancing it out, isn't it? It can't all just be smiles and rainbows.
I mean, I think we expect T1 to at least continue with this. It's hard to say they won't make it back, considering they literally have made every single possible final that they could have made last year. They made all of them. LCK, MSI, Worlds, with the way they're currently
there's
playing.
There's no locks in League. Listen, mate, if Gen G last season doesn't show you there's no locks for the final in League of Legends, because here's the problem. They could be, here's the thing, Monty, maybe they'll even be the best Korean T1 Korean team, but the problem is China's coming with a couple of bangers again.
Yeah, I know they haven't. Real good,
I know they haven't managed to do it from the number one seed, but eventually a number one seed's going to get it together from the fucking LPL and just rock everyone. It's going to happen eventually.
I mean, JDG was good before they upgraded at their two weakest positions, and now they have Knight and Ruler. So that obviously is going to be a banger team.
Or as Core JJ calls him, the old tactical. whatever. How dare you, Core JJ? Just listen, as we say in England, wind your neck in. Just wind your neck in.
But yeah, I think there is a very clear upper echelon of those two teams, and then there's a cut, and then there's Gen G and KT below them. And then there's Hanwha Life, who can't figure out how to play League of Legends for the life of them. And I really hope,
dude, you know this. That is the Korean XL. It just is, isn't it? It should be so much better than this, Monty. But they're only one side. And look, I don't want to sound like a hater here, because I don't actually hate on fucking people like Zeka. But like, I did sort of want to see you all come back to reality, though. He isn't like fucking Chovy or Rocky or fake. He's just a good player,
Yeah.
He's a good player.
I did want them to be competitive for playoffs.
For fun reasons, to make everyone else challenge. But that team looks fucking terrible right now, mate.
They really, really do. I think you probably have to believe that the jungle change will be coming sooner rather than later. But at the same time, I think one of the problems with LCK teams is that when they've been clearly flawed, they don't make changes, and they don't make changes between spring and summer, which is.
Shall I tell you a theory? I've got a theory I want to run by you. So you tell me what you think, Monty, because I'll give you the credit. You know more in theory about Korean culture than me, right? This is what I think as to why they don't do it. It's actually one of the things that I actually find really hard to deal with when I read interviews with Korean players. A Korean player will be like objectively by every metric and result of the worst player in a match, and he'll lose, and he will actually apologize like he fucked up. Even if he played great, he will be like, I'm sorry, I apologize for losing. I will try harder next time, and next time I will come back and win. And so unfortunately, I've always felt like the brilliant Korean work ethic that can do so much for the game, it can, in my opinion, sometimes be a little bit, I wouldn't, maybe saying abused is too much, but it's a little bit too leaned on, in my opinion, by the Korean orgs. Like, the problem is, that story about Vethio? Like, Korean players don't mental boom after 4 games and go, I cannot play anymore. Like, a Korean player, literally, it's one of the things I respect, but also it breaks my heart. They will try even when it's almost impossible, and just keep trying and just keep trying. And they really believe it's why their culture is amazing, that they will, that anyone can become the best. Like, if people don't know, there was a very shrewd fact someone said on a podcast, but it was nothing to do with esports, and it blew my mind. It was actually about Japan, believe it or not. They said that one of the reasons in Japan people have an excellent level of high achieving is, believe it or not, Monty, because they have that whole vibe there. You remember that famous saying, like, the nail that sticks out is the one that attracts the hammer? They have a whole saying of don't essentially be humble your whole life. Don't ever think you're anything. Keep your self-esteem down. And so unfortunately, even though on some level it's fucked up to have low self-esteem, their self-esteem, the way they do it is, right, you have self-esteem, but we've got a fix for that. Work really hard. And if you work really hard, we will benefit you, we'll praise you. And so unfortunately, what causes the excellence also means you will essentially, like, to me, some of the Korean players remind me of those stories in the American military where it's like, if the sergeant says run through a brick wall, you just do it. He knows he's the sergeant, you're the soldier, you run through a brick wall. Because I agree with you. Some of these teams, they should just blow them up. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't keep going like this. Like, how's this going to end the year? Well, it's not.
There has to be something that's done in drastic changes, and I think that the idea is that you're always capable. The individual is always capable of doing more to contribute to the collective good, so that even if you're playing well, the idea is that you can still do even more in order to make the team succeed, and that the failure is still somehow partially your responsibility.
Even if you carry
way of looking at the world.
Even if you are the carry in the game as well and you lose the game, like, they still feel like you could have done more. And by the way, the sad thing about it is, like I said, unfortunately, I can tell you that mindset is what will make you the greatest. Like, I'll tell you right now, Monty, when Simple used to hard carry Na'Vi in CSGO, he would also say and believe the same thing. Like, I also could have done more. And I'd be like, bro, you dropped like 45 kills. It's like, yeah, but if I got those 2 on the first round, I would have 47. We would have won. Like I said, that's a fucked up mentality. But if it works, you will be the greatest player of all time. Like, no, you can't stop that mentality.
Yeah, and I mean, probably that's the difference with Nico, right? Nico, it doesn't have that mentality.
I mean, he works as hard as well, but there's definitely players that, they're more like they take it and leave it. Depends what the team's like. Depends, there's definitely a lot of people where like they would be more like, wow, I was good in that game. I guess I see what you mean, actually, because to be fair, Nico would never admit he would probably just be like, yeah, I was pretty good. Like, whatever. Next time we get him.
It's a different level of drive, right? It's a different level of drive. But yeah, I do hope that there are, I don't want to go too crazy after seeing Hanwha Life only play 4 matches, but I think if by the end of the first round robin we haven't seen meaningful improvement, Wolf is a lot higher on them. He liked the stuff that he saw in their last series, and you guys can listen to him.
He's not going to like him getting stomped by T1 in the next game, is he? He's not going to like that, mate.
I mean, we expect that to happen, right? Sure. We expect that to happen. But I think if we can see meaningful improvement, and you guys can go listen to Wolf's opinion on the Monty and Wolf show that I do with him, we all hope they're going to do better. And
the problem is, let's be real. Right now, you still do have champions like Zeri. You have some very strong ADCs. When you have a player with the talent level of Viper, it can still turn around. You can still win some games. I just think fundamentally, it's a bit like the XL one. The actual team doesn't seem like it's worked as well as it could have. Like, it hasn't come together like you hope.
Sometimes you need to just make a change, like signing Dread and replacing Clid with him, just to reinvigorate spirits. Right. It's not necessarily that the players are fundamentally bad, but sometimes you got to just make a shift to improve morale. Right. And then you can return to what you had originally planned later. So, yeah, that's about it, I think, for the LCK. Obviously, we talk a lot about LCK and Monty and Wolf. So if you want some long analysis about that Dplus versus T1 series, you guys can go over to that show and get it. We touched on a lot of the main points here.
And also, I will just say this. I'll just throw this out to be a tiny bit of a cunt. Imagine that, Monty. Why would I do that? But here's the little tag I'll just throw out there. Y'all commentators and analysts love at Worlds talking about every T1 lineup just because Faker's there, one player. You talk about it like the team from 2015. You go, well, they're going to have a lot of experience in the finals, Monty, because they've been there before. Well, then logically, I want you to all address DRX, who has Beryl, as the world champions. Every match they play, this is the world champions. Logically, why would it be different? It's the same shit. That's the same shit. But you see how whack it is when I make that example. It's nothing like that, is it? The joke is it's Beryl and fucking who? Well, we know the players, but they're not fucking good, are they?
I mean, they should be better than they are with this roster. They are also excelling.
Oh, they're underwhelming like a motherfucker. Yeah, this is supposed to be like a dark horse, maybe, if it came together in the perfect way,
Yeah, well, luckily, Thorin, we have a banger of Hanwha Life versus DRX. Okay. Coming out later this week.
Okay.
So we get to see which of the underwhelming teams is less underwhelming. I actually do think that's low key going to be a banger. It's like Beryl versus Zeka and King. Yeah. And like there's some fun shit going on there. I will probably watch that on my stream for the lulz. All right. Should we do some viewer questions?
Yeah, do a few questions.
All right. We are going to go back into the Grog Coin channel and put a bow on our Grog Coin before we announce our new way of asking questions on the show. Let's see here. I'm not going to ask ones that are no longer relevant, such as predicting stuff before the season started, because some of these questions are.
I think Excel won't be that good, Monty, if you ask me. To be fair, we could almost do a skit like that where we just run a whole thing back. Like, go on.
Let's see here. What is your biggest or most unique pet peeve? Didn't we do this one already?
No, I had one like that in CSGO, I know. That was like pet peeves in the game or something. I don't think we did it in a league, did we? Biggest pet peeve? What is your biggest pet peeve in life, Monty?
I think I said this already with Richard when Richard was.
Oh, Four Horsemen. We had something. You're right. On Four Horsemen.
I think I said that it's people who think that there should be a advantage in
bracket reset in double elim,
like a bracket reset in League of Legends or Counter-Strike or other long games, or there should be an advantage to the winners bracket team in double elimination, and that because there isn't, we can't run double elimination is like it actually just Omega tilts me.
All right, here's the thing. I'll spin it because I won't do whatever I said then, but I'll do a different pet peeve because, spoiler, I have a lot of pet peeves, don't I? If people don't know, that is actually my strength and my weakness. Like, you're all going to say, like, you're so harsh. Like, by definition, here's a word you'll love, Monty, that's been abused in the English language. You know, in the modern day, discrimination's terrible, isn't it? Actually, discriminating, by definition, when we're talking about ideas, is the best possible thing you can do. It's how you differentiate what's good, what's bad, what's different, what are the patterns. Literally, yeah. The idea is if you don't discriminate, by the way, then logically you will date anyone. You will live anywhere. You will take any job at any... You must be discriminating to live a life of value. So what I would say is this. My actual big pet peeve in that regard is I hate when people... let me think how I explain this. I hate basically when people want a type of... They say, I want X, but all of their actions subsequently show they don't want X. And sometimes they want not X. So a classic example would be like ones where people say, we've had it our whole fucking careers. Remember, the whole time Reddit's ever seen our show, there's always a contingent of people like, Thorin doesn't understand the game, and we really need high-level analysis, blah, blah, blah. And then the joke is, when someone like one of my mates and a fellow content creator like Jensen Gore does like a video like that, or has a Patreon where he breaks down games and shows you like a new tech and different players, or they do a video where it's like, this is our crossback. Y'all don't even watch it. I can even retweet it and you won't watch it. Like, I'm giving you exactly what you want. And the joke is, you just say you want that because what you're doing is you're taking advantage of public perception about what it says about you. You're basically the guy who goes, my favorite music, well, it's hard to pick between Brahms and Mozart and Beethoven, but then at home, you never listen to that. You're listening to fucking Limp Bizkit into Linkin Park back to back, which I listen to, but I don't pretend I listen to the other shit. So that is a massive pet peeve, because as a content creator, you must have had this. I've had to tell so many analysts and content creators, look, I know it sounds fucked, but don't listen to fan feedback. They will lead you down a path and they will frustrate you because you will think I am dealing with what they want, and it isn't what they want.
There have been many psychology experiments that show that people say their behaviors do not bear through what they say they want. They behave in a way that they want something that they say they don't want. So there you go. Let's keep going. I Will Dominate listed one of the main issues with NA is the inability to find 5 players who will completely commit themselves to the game for an entire year of play. If you had to make a team of grinders from current or past NA players, including imports, you choose.
Okay.
I mean, Bjergsen has been famously a grinder. He's
By the
always
way,
tried really hard.
It has to be Bjergsen.
Really hard.
It has to be Bjergsen because Jensen notoriously isn't like that. He is more the guy who just chills, and there's no one else except them too. So it has to be Jensen for mid lane. Core JJ is a good one.
Sven is a mega grinder.
It definitely can't be double lift. Spoiler. By definition, it cannot be double lift down there.
He actually just gave up, so
exactly. So yeah, you can have Sven. Even though people might not like him as an ADC, he was definitely a grinder. In fact, I even had mad respect that even during the TSM and the hard times in some of the Cloud9 he just kept going. He just kept working.
Yep.
What about for jungler though? Who's a grinder as a jungler?
I don't know.
Because the problem is, if I go like, I will dominate, people go, oh, bloody hell. So, all right, maybe I won't pick out. Is there anyone else, though? Is there any player who's a
Thorin plays a lot of the game. He's very dedicated. He has that Nordic work ethic.
Whatever.
I don't know.
That just proves hard work doesn't work. Whatever. What about, who's the top lane one, though? Because it can't be impact for that one. He definitely does forward in some of the games. Who's the top lane one?
He doesn't try very hard during the regular season, I don't think.
Do you know what's sad? As much as, maybe this will be one moment where we reach the olive branch out. Actually, I did a reflection with this guy years ago. It was all squash. You know what? I might say Dyrus as a top laner. Yep. This is a guy who always, another guy who took a million fucking shit ends of the stick, seemed to always put in the hours, learned the new champions, whether it was Lulu or Olaf or fucking whatever it was. Like, yeah, I always respected his game in that sense.
Yep. Next, literature has Romeo and Juliet. Cinema has Thelma and Louise. Music has Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. What does esports have? What is esports' greatest love story?
MonteCristo and Thorin. One of the greatest romances of all time. Remember that picture me and you took when Susie took it the day I came back to Korea after one of my trips where we did like the little you did one and we don't. There's one. It's on my Instagram somewhere, guys. That's a pretty good one. Pretty good romance.
Also, Tasteless and Artosis.
That's a classic.
There's a classic one for you guys.
And there's Assembler. There's a bunch of them, right?
Yeah. Best mix of 2 esports personalities to come up with the best persona. Best mix for the worst persona. Dragon Ball Z type fusion. Oh, this is fun.
I like the worst one. That's the funniest one. But we'll do the best one. Because obviously, here's the thing. Technically, Is the idea that they're supposed to have two fun personalities, or is it like I take like an analyst with the brain and then like the personality the other one? Which way are we doing it?
Best mix for two esports personalities and worst for Dragon Ball Z type.
I mean, the joke is, again, our fusion would be pretty good.
Yep.
Be pretty good. Good.
Yep.
That'd be pretty good. What else then? I mean, I'm trying to think. Here's the problem. I'm trying to think of who the fuck you could fuse with like LS or something like. I don't know. Let me think. You know what? I'll tell you for real.
I actually think Atlas LS cast worked because like Atlas
good.
and LS together is a pretty good one.
You know what? I actually think a pretty good one, an underrated one, would actually be if you fused Cadril and LS. Because here's why I think. Because I actually think Cadril, despite the fact he occasionally says something a bit spicy, he's actually very good at doing what LS does, but in sort of a bit of a more boring way. And it's like if you just want to see that, if you actually do want to see the in-depth stuff, you just want Cadril, right? LS also will put a lot of showmanship on it. I think if you combine the two, you might have the perfect blend of like, you could have the most outrageous take and you could also have the most grounded take at the same time, you know.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I'd also, obviously, the joke is cause LS, it'd be called, the combo would be called K-Drells. K-Drells. See? There you go. I've even done a fucking combination for you. Who do you want for your best? Who are you going to do for your best on this one?
I don't know. I think we came up with some good ones. I said
what about for a bad one?
LS one.
Let's do the worst possible one. Because this here's the thing. I'll flame a lot of people and tell it. Well, I don't give a fuck, man. It's a lot about my friends, so don't worry about it.
I want to fuse Sadikist and Frankie so that they say outrageous things and then get offended by themselves.
And also, there's no way anyone would last even 5 hours in a green room with those two. Right, I'll do a similar one. Because what I'll do is this. Let me think how to frame this. Right, this is going to be whack, so I'll have to do a deep pull for this one. But if you know the reference, it's fire. I will take original OGN Mole Trap, who, if people don't know, was a bedroom StarCraft cast. I used to watch him in Brutal when I was a noob, who I didn't know was just shit, but was just doing an average job. And he was just super basic, basically. He didn't have any in-depth knowledge about League. He was just like, there's a reason why Monty and Dora were the replacement of that. Like, he wasn't good. He was clearly someone from another game, and no one took to him. So essentially, I'm saying, like, I think it wouldn't work at all. Nothing about it works. And I would combine that, not with the other, just with Freak's arrogance. See what I've done there? That would be the most annoying talent of all time. Because here's the thing, I didn't take his knowledge, right? That can still be it, but I'm just taking his arrogance and combining the two into a shit sandwich.
There are some really funny ones you could make. The internal conflict in some of these people would be outrageous.
That'd be wild.
The summoner spell Revive is back on the menu. How would it affect the meta in pro play? It would be terrible, guys. I mean, you basically, you would send that person in to die to like clear out wards, because if they died, then you could just use Revive to get back to the Baron fight before the other team could take it. Yeah, it would be awful. Based on what you both know about current teams' practices and scrim philosophy, what would a week look like under your coaching, and how would you structure it? How much time would you leave for discussion, theory talks, that kind of stuff? I actually don't think the teams are too inefficient with this these days. They have a lot of people and performance coaches and everything that I don't think the practices are terrible.
Here's the thing. I agree, because they've had so many years and they've gotten like a basic thing. But I do still think that one day someone will come along. It could have been an LS, who knows? I just didn't have the personality, the temperament to be the teacher in this sense. One day someone will revolutionize Western League of Legends with using theory in the better way than they do now. I think, and I've said this forever, FOD reviews are probably the most inefficient way to convey information and to get specific points across to specific people that won't apply to the other 4 people. I think it's terrible. I think it's actually one of the most inefficient methods. So I think in the modern day, you want theory. I want theory to be more abstract, Monty. I don't want it to be like, you made this mistake. I want it to be almost like, here's a brain puzzle. You find yourselves after the Baron, the ADC has gone down. It's one of those, and then you solve it like together. Like, well, I could do this. I would love that, because in my opinion, that's the area to tie it back into what we said about coaching. That the saddest thing about coaching is you coach till the game starts, then it's like you're gagged. Bloody hell, what the hell? What's going on? And you can't say anything. So instead, you want your players essentially to themselves internalize what the logic is. Here's what we're going to do on macro. Here's what we're going to do here. So I've always thought if someone could come up with a better way of using theory in that sense, not just a VOD review, but actually like real theory. This is the abstract concept. See, if people don't know, that's actually how in CSGO in 2016, Luminosity, the Brazilians, became the best. It wasn't just they had Cold Zera. They used to spend hours doing theory. And what it meant, Monty, was by the end of, as the year went on, every player understood this philosophy of how they played, because their team famously was very good in like late round situations, like a 2v2 or a 3v3. They would always manage to like punish the enemy when he made a push. They would put, it's like, and it's because they'd all gone over this stuff so many times. So I feel like in League, especially a game like that with the macros so important, I feel like they're still missing a trick in the West, in my opinion.
I think that if I had infinite resources, I would do things more like an NFL team where you break up the players by kind of position groups. So you have film review by position. So it's like all the defensive backs go into a room and all the quarterbacks go into a room. And if you had infinite resources to kind of like create highlight reels, because I think the problem is the inefficiency of reviewing plays in League of Legends. Like what you want to do is get your jungler into a one-on-one conversation, and you want to show them, very quick clips of their play to try and focus on specific things.
They do this in the NFL. You know this, Monty. You'll take like one player and you just show him a clip of like, here's your 4 sequences where you messed up the blocking or whatever, right?
Right. And then also it helps you prepare for your opponents, because you can show them, hey, these are the tendencies of, what you're going to be facing for the next week. So I think a lot of what I would try and fix is like having a very efficient system for presenting information to players where you like clip it all out and like keep it snappy and really focused. Because I think that when you go through VOD review, there's so many things happening at the same time that it becomes difficult to focus. Players can like zone out because something's happening on the opposite side of the map and then they're not really engaged. Like I think you really just have to break it up by position and really focus the film. But the problem with doing that is it requires a lot of resources.
Probably need more coaching stuff.
You need more coaches. You need people who are like clipping that out and making it efficient. So
the joke is, Cassard made this point in CSGO, and I agree with him. I think they need it in League as well, Monty. I think you need an NFL type staff. You need someone who really is the jungle coach. You need someone who is like the macro coach, and then the idea is he just specializes in that. And that's what he's doing. Because the last thing I'll throw in there is this. I think the dumbest thing teams do is where they do a VOD review of the game that just finished. Guys, if you're even going to take an example, use it in 3 days when there's no emotion attached. And when I'm not just coming off the game, when I don't feel blamed that you know what I mean? There's ways to do that I've always thought that was the least efficient way to do it. Because like you're saying, let's say we played the game, Monty, where I think I'm double lift. I just 1v9'd the game and we lost. Well, spoiler, I'm just tuning out everything you're telling the jungler and the top laner. I'm thinking, they bloody idiots, like, had nothing to do with me. So I'm not learning anything in that VOD review, am I?
Yeah. I think, though, that if you guys want opinions on efficiency of practice, you should go to Artemis's TikTok, because Artemis, the former EG coach, has actually been making a lot of really well-reasoned content around scrim schedules. And he's got, it's on his Twitter as well, but he just talks to the camera about like the issues that he sees with scrimming and efficiency in practice and everything like that. It's really good. How would you remake the NFL's overtime rules? I think they're okay right now. I think since they changed them so that each team is guaranteed a possession, it fixes a lot of the problems, because they had to change at the end of last year, because that Bills-Chiefs game in the playoffs last year was maybe the best NFL game I have ever seen. And
I mean, the Bengals one was pretty good too. This one now.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that that game was so good and it went to overtime and then it just ended in the most unsatisfying way possible. So the fact that at least both teams get one possession, you do have to be careful, because the problem with the NFL is that football is a fantastic game where formats are always going to be limited by how dangerous that game is to play. And so we just have to kind of take L's on format, and we have to take L's in terms of overtime, because we need to acknowledge that it is a ludicrously, potentially deadly sport. So I think
I'll tell you a suggestion no one's ever done. And you can only say this as a Brit and an outsider who isn't from America and doesn't know the NFL history, Monty. Here's the one. You remember the suggestion they had in the past for NHL for overtime, which was a pretty cool one. You keep taking a man off the ice every X minutes to make a goal eventually, because there's more space. What if in the overtime, the field shortened, but you each get a crack?
I mean, yeah. The thing is,
wouldn't that be exciting?
If
you start like the 20.
It's exciting in the same way though that penalty kicks are exciting, where it's like you're changing the game so much.
Yeah, but here's my problem, Monty. What I think kills overtime in the NFL, and spoiler, everyone who watched this year and last year's Chiefs Bengals games knows what I'm talking about. Imagine being on the losing team and then you just lose to a fucking kick. That's the least satisfying way to ever lose a game. And the problem with the kicks is they can make them from too far out now, Monty. I actually think kicks are way too OP in the fucking NFL now. People can make it consistent like 40. It's ridiculous.
I think you would need to do it in a way because certain teams have different strengths. Like some teams are good at deep pass and everything like that. And, you know, it is sometimes for certain teams harder to score in the red zone because there's such a short field that the pass coverage can get a lot better.
Sure.
Right. So if you're a strong running team and you can kind of just pound it in, you have an advantage. So maybe you start at like the 40 or something like that. Yeah, I think there's definitely options. There's definitely options.
Now what was the rest of that? Let me think.
That's it. That's it.
Ah, fair. I will say though, one thing that is doing my head in about the NFL as a quick aside is, mate, maybe because in the past years I wasn't actually as versed on what the rules were and how you differentiate them. Dude, it has the exact same problem the NBA does, which is every single massive game has an insane blown call late. Yep. And the worst thing is, I've noticed this, and now I've realized it's killing the game for me. I've noticed what NFL rules refs do, Monty, is the same NBA refs do. If you know you blew that call, but you're not gonna stop, you're gonna double down on it. You just try and give the other team a fucking stupid call right afterwards. It's like, you don't know. Literally, when you're a child, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Why would it make sense to call a bad foul on him when you did? Because, mate, some of these ones you get where, like, the most egregious are obviously where they're literally on the replay, the wide receivers like that, and then someone's just like, and karate chop. And then they're like, that's a legitimate player. And then meanwhile, some fucking actual sick edge rusher will go in and almost put like Joe Burrow to bed, like, quiet, sleep, go down. And they'll be like, the unnecessary roughing the passing. You're like, what is this garbage? Like, who the fuck made these rules? It's so badly officiated. I think it's badly officiated, mate.
I just don't understand why they still haven't put in like a
cameras,
the sky ref where it's like who can overrule.
Yes,
you could look at it and be like, nah, this was wrong. Come on, we have instant replay technology right now. Surely we can do this better. It's stupid.
Because the problem is, because the TV is going to show you every angle. Like I always say, that Rams Saints one from years ago.
Yeah,
the reverse angle made it look so dodgy. You just knew it was 100% like pass interference, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay, what careers would you guys have pursued if not for esports? I don't know.
I mean, I've always said, and spoiler, don't fuck around. I might still do it. The dream was always comic book writer.
Yeah, it's never too late.
Pretty good one.
It's never too late. I think the reason I don't know the answer to that question is that when I graduated from college, I basically was like, well, I don't know what I want to do, so I'm going to go get the highest paying job that I can get. And I was working at a law firm in New York City because I wanted to have options while I figured it out, and I wanted to have resources to pursue my own interests. And because I had been involved in esports, for years already in various capacities, when I saw an opportunity to do it, it was just fun for me, and I was doing it on the side. And it just, eventually the industry got to the point where I could make it a career. So I basically created options for myself in order to pursue whatever took my fancy. So the answer is I don't know, because I don't know if esports hadn't been going well, what I would have done with my time instead. Maybe I would have gone to a literature PhD program. I was thinking about I guess I can sort of answer this. Rice University in Texas has a PhD program in Western mysticism, esotericism, and Gnosticism. I was seriously considering going to that. So maybe I would have gotten a PhD in being a wizard. Basically. How to create a moral ethics values framework. That's an interesting question.
I mean, one thing I will say about that is the silly thing I think people do in the modern day, and it kind of shows how people have been sucked into this like commodified consumer culture, is they really do think it's like that guy there. You just ask what book should I buy to define my entire moral worldview of what's right and wrong universally through all of history, spirit and time, and how I should live? It's like, homie, that's the quest of life as far as I can tell, isn't it? Isn't that what the journey of life is, to discover? Like, you immerse yourselves in different philosophies. You put yourself in different situations. I'd say a massive deal is you try in a detached way to look at your own life situations and ask yourself, look, even though you might feel annoyed, but maybe you were in the wrong on that situation. Or, for example, even if it feels right, maybe you've violated one of your moral precepts that you don't do that. It's somewhere you don't like. So you thought, fuck, like, I think a lot, essentially, like I say, it's a journey. I don't think you can fit. There's no one. Like, sorry, I'm not the Christian, so I can't say read the Bible. Like, I'd say read all that shit. Read everything that potentially has wisdom in it, take the good shit.
I think you have to go back to, I say this as an atheist, I think you do have to go back to religious texts, which offer a very large amount of accumulated human knowledge and things that fundamentally resonate with the collective unconscious, if we're using Jungian terms. I think you have to read philosophy. I think you have to read mythology and ancient stories that hold wisdom. And I think you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. I think you cannot have a moral framework without risk, because eventually you're going to discover a truth that goes contrary to groupthink, and you have to have the courage to stake out that moral position. And sometimes staking out that moral position means that it hurts you from a financial, career, interpersonal relationships perspective. But I guess the way that I do things is, first off, obviously I take risks and I stand up for myself and I stand up for my beliefs. But the way I look at my life is this: when I die, will I have been happy with the decision that I made? Because at the end of the day, when you die, it doesn't matter how much money you die with, right? It matters the person you are when you are in that moment. And if you can honestly look back at your life and say that I made the decisions that were in line with my own values and my own character, and activating that character. And so that's the way that I look at these things, where when I look at something that's going to be hard or uncomfortable, and I say, if I look back on this on my deathbed, is this the right decision for me? Should I stand up in this moment? Will I regret that, not taking that fight later on, even if it's going to be hard? And that's how I make the decision.
One thing I would say as a little like pro tip is you can also observe it from the other side. So here's how it goes. When you actually do stand for something and say the truth when other people disagree, and have moral precepts that say this is right and this is wrong, and I'm not afraid to stand on that platform, you will have people hate you. You must, it is necessitated, because logically the ones who disagree will despise you, will hate you. So here's how you can tell, in my opinion, like a compass, you're doing it right, and that it's what you want as your ethics. And it's when you have the right enemies. It's a myth that you shouldn't have any enemies. I love, for example, how ridiculous my enemies are. You know that famous like Voltaire statement, like, thank God for making my enemies so like ridiculous or whatever. Like, that's how I feel when I see some of these idiots and when, for example, they can't actually beat me because they haven't got any evidence on me. I haven't done anything wrong. So they have to lie or they have to concoct something. In that way, it shows me actually I'm doing right. I'm doing the right thing.
And a lot of the time, the enemies that you make are going to be the ones who are jealous of your strengths because they cannot mimic them, or they're afraid of what it means. They're afraid of what it means if you're right, because it says that they have made an unethical action. If you are
implies something about them, right?
Yeah, it implies something about them, and they will hate you for it. So I think enemies are a good thing to have. Answer these fun questions. Monty and Wolf are colloquially known as the Korean enthusiasts of this act, fellatio.
Okay.
What's the French word for the number 10 is D.
It's just like Jeopardy or something. Okay. So
What's the French word for the number of 10? D, but he might be wanting me to say dicks. I have a feeling that if the first one's fellatio, then the second one is
because D's, right, because that's 10. Yeah,
it's D, but yeah. What family of fruits did the former top laner? Oh, he wants D's, so he wants nuts. So what family of Freeze is the
yeah.
former top laner of Samsung SSB, Samsung Blue, I guess, and former jungler of Rocks Tigers named themselves
so it's nuts,
Acorn and Peanut. So it's
Fellatio D's nuts. Okay. Right, okay. Is this founded 420 or something? It was this. Come on.
I figured it out before I had finished it. It wasn't subtle, but it was funny.
Okay, that wasn't bad.
Fellatio D's nuts. How good would the merch need to be for you to consider wearing TSM merch that they sent you for free? I would wear it for skits that make fun of TSM. I absolutely would wear it. I would wear free TSM merch. I could do fun stuff with that.
Oh, people don't know. The only reason I didn't buy a TSM jersey for that reason, I just didn't want them to have my fucking address. Pretty good reason.
That's fair.
About it. So.
Yeah, because it would probably leak on Double Lift stream as Lena read it out.
Exactly.
What's more likely, a week of LEC without pauses or 4 months without controversy from Blizzard or Riot? Probably 4 months without controversy from Blizzard or Riot.
Oh, there's another thing. Look, that's how you know actually that the game state's in a pretty good place and there's some good games going on. Because mate, that hasn't stopped. They're still having all those fucking stupid pauses. Like the joke is, like in some games, I was saying before, there's no timeouts. Like there may as well be at this point in time. It's getting ridiculous.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Yes. What the fuck?
I mean, he literally has like fucking doesn't he have a Santa Claus out at one? But he has a Santa Claus outfit on at one point in time.
Takes place like on Christmas Eve. Yeah. It is I don't understand why people. I know that this is like a popular thing to argue about, but I don't understand. I don't understand the counter argument that it's not a Christmas.
Because their logic is it's an action. It's like both, you idiot. Like Jingle All the Way is both, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's just both, isn't it? And also, the Christmas element is essential because if the Christmas element isn't there, then what's the meaning behind his relationship with his wife? Why is that relevant?
It's also a Christmas party in the movie. Like the whole premise is based on the fact that it is Christmas. So I don't understand that. Especially in NA, there's a discussion of player salaries based on leaked information. Do you think most of the leaked numbers are accurate? Oh, we kind of talked about this earlier. No, they literally give all of the teams the budgets of the rosters because Riot has all the contracts. They don't break them down individually by player, I don't think. So that information leaks in other ways. I could be wrong about that, but they do get all the teams do understand that Liquid had like a $6.9 million.
It's almost like knowing what the cap is in the NFL, basically. Yeah. But without knowing the individual contracts,
And I think it is important that the teams get that information. I think that information should just be made public. I think all player salaries should be made public. That's my take. But I think it's important that the teams know so that they have an understanding of the spending and kind of overall financial state of the league.
Monty and Thorin, I will say the way that question was asked is mad sauce. Because what he went is he just went, Monty, there's a lot of rumors at the moment. Are all of them true? It's like, what rumors are you talking about? Like, what? Like, you didn't even give a number. Like, you just are all those leaks correct? Well, you just co-sign it without knowing what I'm referring to. Like, sort of trap is this? Is that when you go and ask for a signature, then you folded the letter over? And it's like, I resign. It's like, give me a break.
Monty and Thorin, what habit would you have most wished to pick up earlier in your life?
Oh, this is easy for me, but I've already said it on By the Numbers, which is a CSGO podcast, so I'll do it again here. It's impulse control. I'm terrible. It's one of our worst things. One of my worst things is I actually am even quite good tactically at doing things. It's just if I let my emotion take over, I see red and I don't even think, I just fire off. Like the joke is, this is actually true. It was only a few years back, I even used to pause before I hit send tweet. Afterwards, it was like, well, I can always do another tweet to follow it up. Like I was just send and then think, I was like double lift basically.
I guess sometimes I take people at face value and I assume good intent. That's probably one of my worst qualities.
You say that, but here's the problem, Monty. In a utopia, you'd be amazing. Your problem is you live in a dark, fallen world, innit? So,
I do tend to assume the best out of people and don't assume malicious intent. So sometimes I get surprised. Because here's the thing, guys. I really hate lying myself and I just don't do it. So I get confused. I honestly get confused when people lie to me. Do you think Riot actually thought the New Worlds format was better than the MSI format, or are they simply being spiteful to everyone who asked for Double Limit Worlds? They didn't want to change the number of days of the world format. It's very clear that they didn't want to kill their traveling circus and they didn't want to put it in one location or make it easy on themselves in terms of logistics to make double elimination happen. They want to move from city to city. That is the actual reason. It's the only reason I can think of, because no other reason makes sense.
I agree, because here's the thing. I actually think a mega underrated aspect of doing good esports events, Monty, is going to either the same locations where you are familiar or having the same setup. And I can tell you, this is what ESL mastered in CSGO. They just made it so that, first of all, they did go to the same exact locations year after year after year, and they would have the same type of event. So it was set up the same way with the same number of days. And what that means is once you nail the protocols, you can iterate that over and over, and you can be very, very good. As you're saying, Riot's never done a massive IPL 5-style double elim like TI type. So the problem would be this. I mean, you've seen it with events like TI. If there's ever any problems on the first days, holy shit, batten down the hatches, we're all in trouble. This is going to be really fucking squeaky bum time. So the problem if you're Riot is this. Look, we might not like the competitive format, but they have nailed doing all the worlds. They always get it done. It always looks good. They must know how to do that type of, so what they're sort of saying to us, I get it, is sort of like, but I don't want to change like the winning product. Like I've already got a product I like. So I even though I don't like it, I can sort of understand why they do it still.
And like I said before, they probably sold their sponsors on this traveling show. And so there might be financial reasons or contractual reasons. Like we don't know. Maybe MasterCard and Mercedes really want to have all these live activations in different cities. That might, sponsors demand this shit. And it wouldn't be weird. So, for example, at Worlds, they had MasterCard had a huge stage and stuff outside. The brands care about this stuff. They care about the live interactions with thousands of people, and they may just want to hit more people. I don't know. I just wish they would tell us the real reason. Like, also, that is the real reason that we can understand.
Also, if you're going to be sponsored by MasterCard, double elim would be pretty priceless. A little bit of free advertising for you there. Just a freebie. I'll throw that one out there for free. There you go.
Do you see any possibility of league expansions for any other regions aside from LPL? No, because they need to be profitable first before they expand. The owners are not.
The joke is, we used to have LMS, didn't we? Now it's sort of fucking gone down. Like, I always have to tell people that on every MSI, people act like PCS is like fucking Brazil or something. They're like, they're going to do it. It's like, that's still the old LMS region, that always produced like, the potential upset teams and people who can be in the LPL. Like, the joke is, if that's going to happen, if LCS is going to scale down, like, the only thing that seems to be expanded is ERLs, maybe. That's about it, right?
Yeah, grassroots stuff, I understand why they're doing that, to create a better like regional funnel, and it's working really well in Europe. But I don't think they're going to expand the franchise leagues because it doesn't make sense to do that.
I had an idea. This is a unique idea, but because Brazilians do speak Portuguese, my idea was, because Portugal is barely relevant, sorry to Rux and that, in Europe, is to take all the Portuguese players and send them to Brazil. Not because it'll be a better league. I just don't really like Portuguese/Brazilians. So,
you want them off your continent?
Exactly. I just want to just get rid of them. Get rid of them. Get rid of them.
When we finally get double limit Worlds, will there be a TSM Holy War style episode where viewers submit art or media, where we have the victory parade?
That would be cool.
Oh, we can do that.
Yeah. We should definitely do some more of those things anyway.
I'm picturing a montage of you guys talking about double limb on SI for a literal decade, and then finally ending on Riot's double limb press release. And by the way, nobody at Riot getting fired for making that mistake for 10 years. In 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years, do you still see yourselves covering League of Legends, whether that be because the game loses relevance or because you personally move on from the game? I mean, maybe. We'll see.
Here's the thing. I used to say
money.
Yeah, you know this. Money? Back in the day, I used to just tell people straight up, the reason I cover League of Legends is because, one, it's an enormous game, and then two, it has a unique charm, which is the whole world plays it, right? Yep. I actually realized there's now, because enough years ago, by a third factor. Like, for example, even if League was smaller, if people like Dom or LS or you, and so, I would still do shows, just have convos. Like, as long as I'm watching the game, as long as it's interesting, it would still be. I actually find creating the content, when you've done something enough and you've mastered your craft to some degree, it becomes pleasurable to just do the content as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons. I've always enjoyed League of Legends as a game and doing the analysis for it. The things I didn't like about League of Legends were Riot Games. So now I'm in a situation where we can do bangers only stream. We've got Last Free Nation as a company. So it's pretty fun for me.
Oh,
again,
here's
honestly.
the dream. I'll tell you, here's what no one's thought of. And I'm just going to throw it out there, Monty. This would be the best possible pivot. Imagine some like Western billionaire bought Riot Games, fired all the top currents and execs, and we could just have the same ecosystem and game, but with awesome people. I know that it's so sad that I'm having to make this like a crazy fantasy, but that would be fucking awesome. I tell you what,
Elon.
I'll sign up for another 10 years if someone does that, mate. I'll sign up tomorrow.
Yeah. Let's go, Elon.
I love that.
Let's buy Riot.
Because I've always said the main thing about League of Legends that I find incredibly compelling, even though other people don't seem to think as much, is you have all of China trying to be the best and all of Korea, and you get these amazing, and you notice how the dynamic will always be incredible. They'll never be. This is why the joke is League of Legends is the game that cracked the myth of the faceless Asian from StarCraft 2, because they're so different as regions. Their style will always be different. The strengths, the culture, it's so fun. I find it mega compelling to watch those two. It's why actually the LPL becoming great, I think, gave League of Legends a second life at these worlds, etc.
Yeah. It became a much more compelling thing when the LPL became more of an international threat, for sure. You have the cultural gravitas to change one social convention. Which one is it and why? Ooh. I mean, it has to do with social media for sure, right? I think what I would change is the social convention that it's somehow acceptable to just completely. I wish on social media it was only allowed to say things you would say to that person's face. That would change the
I will say,
world.
Monty, that is the most ridiculous premise for what social media is now.
I know.
Like, that would be like everyone getting beaten up. It'd be like the end of Jane. You remember Jane Silent Bob Strike Back at the end where they go and they fly and they beat up all the people who are the critics of them?
Yeah.
It'd be like that, basically. It would.
Yeah. So, like, I think you should only be allowed to say things on social media that you would literally say to another person.
Do you want to know something you would love, Monty? Because only people like you and Richard and Moses and Yanko know this. Do you want to know a very common thing that haters in CSGO have always said about me? They go, like he'd say that to the player's face. It's like, you don't know me, homie. I'm built different. You don't know me.
I actually do operate by by that principle on social media, where I will literally only say things on social media that I would be willing to say in person.
I once went, you remember that time, me and you, when we were doing the Worlds thing? Oh, no, I can't remember what it was for. You remember, maybe it was when I came for Overwatch League. You know, we went to the LCS that one time and like we went along. And it was when like I have that hilarious picture with Reginald and stuff. Like, that's how you know it's years and years ago, right? Yeah. When we went along, if you remember, it was when Reapard was the coach of Cloud9, right? And I did exactly that. So I went up to Reapard and I thought, you know what? He always seems like he's good for a joke. And so to banter, I've told this story before. I even told him, like, mate, you are one of the best LCS coaches of all time in the regular season. And I said it exactly like that. And unfortunately, when I said like in the regular season, he just sort of went like, huh. And then I actually felt like a bit bad, like, nah, it doesn't really work as well. Because the problem is there's no audience. I'm just being rude to him now, aren't I? So I was even like, forget it. My bad, mate. Don't worry about it. You are good. Don't worry. I just felt bad inside it. Shit, that doesn't work.
Right. And like some of this shit I say on social media, I would say, it's the same exact thing I would say on a broadcast, right? Publicly. So I just try and operate by that principle. But a lot of people will just like start shit that they would never start with you in person. And I could be very confrontational in person if people are doing things I don't like. So I try and operate by that principle. I would change that social.
Look, you know this, but one of the ones that does drive me up the wall is the ones that just go like, if I saw Thorin, I'd fucking ring his neck. It's like, you don't know me, homie. You don't. I ain't that nerd. You think I am, homie? I'm just saying. So, but let's not get into that. So I'll say mine is this, and mine is also massively on brand because it's ridiculous. It could never happen. Obviously, spoiler, this is just totally playing into all my strengths and removing all my weaknesses. I hate, Monty, that you can say something that is true in every regard, but you're not supposed to say it because it's rude or it hurts people's feelings. I told you it's pathetic, Like, I am wishing for a totally different world.
You wouldn't destroy small talk. You hate that too.
No, here's the thing. I actually learned on that one. That's one thing I came around on. Small talk, when you say, I don't do small talk, just means you're bad at it and you don't want to level up, Small talk I learned is this. Yes, you think it doesn't have any value. That means you're telling on yourself. It does. What small talk does is it allows you to basically what would you say, calibrate where the other person's at and then figure out where to make the depth of the conversation. So for example, if you talk to the guy and actually he's not having a good day. Maybe you don't go into a thing about sports. Maybe if you keep it like, like, I actually think small talk's very important now. I was wrong on that one. I'll take the L on that one from years ago.
Okay. But I'm saying if you could change the social conventions.
Oh, if I could get rid of it at all, yeah, I wouldn't even need to learn it. Exactly.
You're literally changing a human social convention. I feel like you would do that. But yeah. All right. That was the last question. Thank you, Grog Coiners. Remember to hit that channel if you have any questions. I will be in there looking for your messages. Yeah. And we will be getting together a different way to do this in the future. As for other stuff, be sure to, of course, subscribe to our channels. Really appreciate that, whether it's YouTube, being a subscriber, following our Twitch channel. I will be doing more bangers only starting 8 a.m. tomorrow. We've got a lot of very good matches that are going to be coming up this week, including T1 versus Hanwha Life and Gen G versus Dplus. I'll be covering on my personal stream, MonteCristo, on Twitch tomorrow, so go ahead and follow that as well. And we've got other shows. Power Spike started this week. It's a snappy show. It's about an hour-long segment base, so it's pretty different. We cover a lot of regions on that show. Monty and Wolf show. Best Damn League show is going to be live tomorrow. If you are an LEC fan, and there's lots to talk about there as LEC. All the games are very meaningful this next week because they created a format. Who could have known that if you create a good format, all the games are exciting? Shocking.
And I did tell you all, when it's only 3 weeks, I can vibe with the little round robin. That's okay.
Yeah,
it's gonna
for sure.
In and out. You don't feel like it lasts too long. Now we're gonna go to the better formats. I think I'm fine with this format, mate. Yeah, it's good.
Yep. And especially because this last week, like, there's going to be a lot of really important games happening. It should be fun. So thanks, guys. Thank you for supporting Last Free Nation. If you subbed on the stream, I saw a lot of you guys did that. We really do appreciate it. We will see you next week, same time, Tuesday, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central European time. On Tuesdays, VODs comes out on Wednesday morning. Goodbye.